Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of what if Deku was born with a strange quirk? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. Congratulations, Midoriya Izuku. On 7/15XX, you were born into this world. You were born with your quirk, Game of Life. Your quirk will not take full effect until your 4th birthday. Good luck. To be born with your quirk was extremely rare. In fact, it was near unheard of. However, that is what happened to Midoriya Izuku. No, he wasn't completely aware of it at first, as he wasn't able to comprehend the words that appeared behind his eyelids when he was first brought into this world. Thanks to this, his view of the world was slightly different than what others see. He was able to see other people's levels as well as their health and stamina points. He found out exactly what those were some time later. However, that was it. That was all he was able to see. That was until he turned 4, when others' quirks would show themselves. On the day of his birthday, he awoke to a message similar to the one he got when he was born. Congratulations, Midoriya Izuku. On 7/15XX, you have turned 4. You are now able to access the full potential of your quirk. Choose an option. X menu. Profile. Customize persona. Other options. Close. Izuku sat up, completely confused. What was going on? He wasn't born with all of his quirk's potential? He stared at the words in front of him, hand hovering cautiously in front of the options, unsure of how exactly to choose. So, he just tapped menu and was surprised when everything changed and new options popped up. Menu. X passive skills. Active skills. Close. He frowned, small lips pouting out. He didn't know what any of this was. So, he closed it and was greeted with the previous screen. This time, he tapped info and let out a small sigh of relief when it displayed information about his quirk. Xinfo. Welcome to the Game of Life quirk. This section will explain the basic fundamentals of this quirk. Everything else will have to be experienced. To start things off, you and everything else has a level, or LV, which is how strong that person or object is. Depending on the LV, the health points HP and stamina points SP will increase. Inanimate objects do not have SP. If your or another person's HP reaches 0, then you will pass out in order to regain it. However, if you are to be attacked while in that state and your HP falls back to 0, you will die. There is no way to revive anyone else or yourself when that happens. SP will be consumed when you use your skills and is your stamina in general. If you are to fall to 0 SP, then you will be unable to move until you regain 1/3 of it back. There are ways to regain SP if you are running low, such as sleeping, which will restore both your HP and SP back to full, or eating, which will partially restore your HP and or SP depending on the item. Moving on from HP and SP are your skills. You have 2 sets of skills, passive and active. Passive skills are skills that are always active and are unable to be turned off. These usually come with status effects or increase your attribute points AP that will be touched upon later. Active skills are skills that you have to manually activate and will consume SP. Both sets of skills have LV'd at S and increase the more you use them, which each use, you gain 1 experience point EXP. You currently have 2 passive and active skills. Please go to the passive skills and active skills pages to learn more about them. Lastly is your AP. Your AP includes the 10 main attributes that everyone has: Strength SR, Endurance END, Defense DEF, Dexterity DEX, Intelligence INT, Charisma C, Wisdom WS, Willpower Will, Perception PAR, and Luck LU. Because you were born with this quirk, you are given 10 AP to add to whichever stat you wish to. With each LV you gain, you will gain 1 AP to add to your preferred attribute. However, there are certain things you are able to do to increase a certain attribute, such as reading for INT, training for STR and END, and so on. LU, however, does not have any way to train it. If you wish to know your exact AP status, then please go to the profile page for more information. With that, you are now able to use Game of Life as adequately as you can. Good luck. Close. Izuku scanned over the words, letting it all sink in. So, His life was basically a video game? He wasn't sure how to feel about that. Sure, it was cool, but wasn't it a bit overpowered? He glanced at his nightstand and was shocked to see that there was a LV above it, just like his Quirk said. The words were getting in his way a bit, so he closed out of the info tab and just stared dumbly at the, presumably, main screen. He took a quick glance at his alarm clock and was slightly surprised to see that it was 5 in the morning. Why am I up so early? Well, he'd just have to make do with it. He doubted he'd be able to go back to sleep now. He had his full Quirk now. So, he decided to look more into it, tapping on the profile tab. Midoriya Izuku. Level. Quirk, Game of Life. Health, 100-100. Stamina, 100-100. XP, 0-10. 15, 6. Int, 11. Cha, 9. Wis, 10. Lu, 7. Well, he didn't know too much about games, but he supposed it wasn't too terribly bad. Maybe. Whatever. He saw that he had 10 AP like his Quirk said and glanced at his stats once more. Well, it seems like his STR and ND could use a bit more. He was surprised to see how high his INT, Def and WIS stats were, but decided not to look too deeply into it. Viridian eyes glanced at the C's stat and thought about it. It seemed like it'd be an interesting stat to increase, just for the heck of it. So, he got to work, trying to even out the stats as best as he could. When he was done, he left out a deep breath he didn't know he was holding and looked at his finished work. Midoriya Izuku. Level. Quirk, Game of Life. Health, 100-100. Stamina, 100-100. XP, 0-10. 7. And 7. 15. Dex, 7. Int, 11. 15. Wis, 10. Truth be told, he felt like he just added the AP at random to whichever stats he felt like, but he found out quickly that he couldn't take it back after increasing his STR and END, but whatever. Too late to worry about it now. He tilted his head, mulling it over. According to his Quirk, his STR, END, and INT stats could all be increased with some personal training to each. He could train his body to increase his STR and END, possibly his Def and Dex as well, and study his but off to increase his IND. He could definitely improve his E by socializing and his WIS by meditating perhaps. As he was going over plans in his head, a few notifications popped up in front of his eyes, startling him from his thoughts. Congratulations! You have now unlocked the skill Critical Thinking. Passive skill, Critical Thinking LV. 1. With this skill, the user able to think clearly and conduct strategic plans. However, the user is more likely to be lost in thought, so if someone were to suddenly bring them out of this state, they will be inflicted with the status confuse. Congratulations! You have now leveled up to LV. 2. You have gained 1 AP. Izuku blinked, watching the notifications slowly disappear before glancing back at his profile. Midoriya Izuku. Level. Quirk, Game of Life. Health, 100-200. Stamina, 100-150. EXP, 533. 7. And 7. 15. Dex, 7. Int, 11. 15. Wis, 10. So, he got 15 EXP from just thinking? Maybe leveling up wasn't going to be as hard as he originally thought. Well, now he has 1 more AP. He tilted his head, wondering where to put it before deciding on just adding it to Dex. Izuku thought being agile and quick on his feet was more important than being strong. Taking another look at his profile, he noticed that his HP and SP had risen but left his usable amount the same as what it was before. So it doesn't refill when you level up. Good to know. He closed out of the profile and clicked on Menu once again. Menu. X Passive Skills. Active Skills. Close. While he was curious about the job and bag options, as his Quirk didn't mention either of those in the Info tab, he decided to look at his skills first. He tapped on the Passive Skills tab and watched as it transferred over to his small list of, well, passive skills. X Passive Skills. Angelic Smile LV. 1. EXP 05. Will cause status charm for up to 5 minutes when user smiles at a target and they are more susceptible to manipulation. Fake Tears LV 1 EXP 05. User cries crocodile tears, inflicting worry and targets are more susceptible to manipulation. Critical Thinking LV 1 EXP 110. With this skill, the user able to think clearly and conduct strategic plans. However, the user is more likely to be lost in thought, so if someone were to suddenly bring them out of this state, they will be inflicted with the status confuse. Green eyes flickered across the screen, reading and absorbing every word they saw. Izuku noticed that both of his previous passive skills only had 5 EXP to level up, while critical thinking had not only that, but he apparently already had 1 for it. Well, he did use it a few minutes ago, so that checked out. So my tears and smile will affect everyone now. He thought to himself, not as bothered as he probably should be. It'd be fun to see how everyone, especially Kakin, would react when he used these skills on them. He closed out of the tab and went to his Active Skills tab. X Active Skills. Sweeping Kick LV 1 EXP 010. This move allows the user to duck low and swiftly knock their opponents off their feet, causing stun for up to 5 seconds. Deals 15 damage. Uses 5 SP. Power Kick LV 1 EXP 010. This move allows the user to deliver a powerful kick to the opponent. Deals 25 damage. Uses 10 SP. He hummed non-committally, resting a knuckle on his chin. Well, if his level was anything to go by, then that move would deal a fair amount of damage on kids his age with 1 use alone. Another notification popped up, once again removing him from his thoughts. Congratulations! You have now leveled up to LV3. You have gained 1 AP. Izuku just stared dumbly at the message as it slowly faded away. Well, guess there's a lot of things that will level me up. Thinking is apparently one of the easiest ways at the moment. He could almost laugh at how easy this leveling system seemed. Well, he was just getting started. Whatever. He closed out of the Active Skills tab and curiously clicked on the Job tab. What popped up shocked him, making his mouth drop open slightly. So, Hero LV 1 EXP 010. Villain LV 1 EXP 010. He honestly didn't know what to think. His quirk made being a hero or villain like a character class. Really, he doesn't think he should be surprised, but he was nonetheless. Not only that, but it turned out he could be both at once? Just how did that work? Another notification popped up, distracting him from his current internal conflict. Congratulations! You have discovered the job option. You are now classified as ambiguous as your job. Please check the Profile tab for more information. Okay, now Izuku was certain his quirk was messing with him. So, he closed out of the tab and went back to the Profile tab. There his was clear as day. His job was listed as ambiguous. Midoriya Izuku. Level 3. Quirk, Game of Life. Health, 100-275. Stamina, 100-175. Job, ambiguous. EXP, 580. 7. And 7. 15. Int, 11. 15. Wis, 10. What does that even mean? Sure, he wasn't the biggest fan of heroes, but he never thought about becoming a villain. He didn't know what he wanted to do, actually. Maybe it was the right choice for him right now. So, he just ignored it, adding the last AP point to ND before closing out and going back to the menu tab. There, he clicked on the bag option and was slightly surprised to see what an inventory from an RPG would look like. He had slots where it seemed that he could place up to 20 items in and just carry around with him. He closed out and went back to the main screen. From there, he tapped Customize Persona and was greeted with a 3D model of himself right dead center of his vision. On the sides were slides that could change how he looked, from his hair color to his arm length. Not only that, but there was 2 checkboxes which showed X-male and female. He assumed the X-male was the one that was checked because he was, well, a boy. Seems like he could change his gender if he wanted to. How was he supposed to feel about that? There was also a default option, which he was eternally grateful for because, Knowing him, if he ever did try to change his appearance, he would never be able to change himself back. He quickly closed out before he was tempted to even try and went to the last option he had yet to try, which was labeled fittingly enough other options. X other options. Sound 100 100. FOV 100 100. Background noise 100. 100. Vision 100 100. Touch 100 100. Taste 100 100. Smell 100 100. Close. Well then. Seems like he could turn off whatever sense he wanted at any time. I suppose that could be useful? For what exactly, he had no idea. Maybe I can finally eat those disgusting carrots. Hey, he was still a child, don't judge him. He closed out of it and was surprised when another new notification went off. Just how many was he going to get from this morning alone? Congratulations! You have explored your quirk to its fullest extent. You have gained 1000 EXP and unlocked the tap quests. Izuku suddenly felt dizzy, nearly toppling over, a hand quickly planting itself on the bed to steady him. He blinked a few times, waiting for the dizziness to fade away before looking back up, slightly confused. He quickly went to his profile tab and noticed his HP and SP were getting quite low. Well, that's what he gets for leveling up so quickly. Midoriya Izuku. Level 7. Quirk, Game of Life. Health, 100 725. Stamina, 100 275. Job, Ambiguous. EXP, 71 428. 7. Int, 11. Wis, 10. He closed out of it and noticed the quest tab located on the front page. Green eyes blinked slowly before he clicked on it. There are no quests currently available. Just as he was about to close out of it, another notification popped up. New quest. Objective, wake mom up. Wake Midoriya Inko up and tell her about your new quirk. Rewards. Plus 100 EXP. Bonus. Wake Midoriya Inko up with breakfast in bed. Plus 100 EXP. Plus 10 respect points RP with Midoriya Inko. Plus 10 love points LP with Midoriya Inko. Will you accept? Izuku studied the words for a moment before smiling and tapping yes. Glancing at his alarm clock, he noted that it was now 7. Seems that he spent longer than he thought checking out his quirk. He hopped out of bed and hurried to the kitchen. He had a quirk to show off. Thanks to his attempt at cooking, he was given a passive skill for all of his troubles. It popped up when he was waiting for the toast to finish, startling him and making him nearly knock off the plate of eggs and orange juice. Congratulations! You have now unlocked the skill Homemade Treats. Passive skill, Homemade Treats LV. 1. Upon use of this skill, the user is able to make foods in accordance to their level. Anything that is over their level will require the use of SP depending on the dish. Anything made with this skill will immediately give the receiver either plus 10 to 50 RP, FP or LP depending on the intention behind the gift. Well, he thinks to himself, that's a nice skill to have. It seems that passive skills were fairly easy to acquire, and not only that, but they were a bit overpowered, not having to use SP unless you try to do something you're not capable of at the moment. Well, when he maxes out the levels, he'll be golden. The messages slowly disappeared and the toast popped up, the sound jolting him from his thoughts. He smiled and quickly placed the hot pieces of bread on the plate and sloppily pasted butter on top of them. He picked up his finished plate of food. At least it wasn't poisonous or anything, it was just a bit messy, and the glass of orange juice and hurried to his mother's room, excited to wake her up. Using his elbow to open the door, he slinked through the small opening he managed and set everything on her bedside table. Taking a deep breath, he poked her cheek, smiling warmly as she began to stir. Wake up, Mama. Breakfast is ready. Izuku? She called out sleepily, blinking her eyes open as she frowned in confusion. What's going on? I made you breakfast. He told her proudly, puffing out his chest as her eyes traveled to the mess of food on the plate on her bedside table. Her green eyes grew wide and her mouth gaped open in surprise. Oh my, Izuku, did you do this all by yourself? He nodded eagerly, smiling growing as she smiled back. Oh my sweet baby boy. You didn't have to. But I wanted to. He told her, speaking mostly of the truth. While it was his quirk that gave him the prompt, he did want to do something for her as a sort of thanks for everything she's done for him. Also, Mama, I have something to tell you. I got my quirk. She gasped. Oh, my baby boy, that's wonderful. What is it? It's called Game of Life, and it's like living in a video game. Izuku told her excitedly. I have stats and quests and even a bag to put things in, like my own personal inventory. With that, he told her everything he knew about his quirk, from his skills to his other options. Inko listened with undivided attention, happily absorbing everything Izuku told her. She was just so happy her sweet child had a quirk. When he finished, he had the brightest smile on his face that Inko couldn't help but melt at. A notification popped up, slightly surprising Izuku. He really needed to get used to that. Congratulations! You have completed the quest Wake Mom Up. Rewards. Plus 100 EXP. Congratulations! You have achieved the bonus requirements. Bonus. Plus 100 EXP. Plus 10 RP with Midoriya Inko. Plus 10 LP with Midoriya Inko. Congratulations! You have now unlocked the Relationships tab. Izuku waited until the messages faded before turning back to his mom, who had a confused expression on her face. He smiled gently. Oh, that was just my quirk telling me I finished a quest. I sometimes get notifications that pop up from time to time. I guess I'm the only one who can see them. He added shyly, rubbing the back of his neck. Inko just chuckled and ruffled his hair. Well, as long as you're fine. She brought him into a bone-crushing hug. Oh, Izuku, sweetie, I'm so proud of you. He blushed and wiggled out of her grasp, sending her an embarrassed look. Mom. He groaned. She giggled. Well, let me get dressed and enjoy my baby's precious cooking, okay? The greenette nodded and hurried out. He was eager to see what this relationships thing was all about. He plopped down on the couch after having grabbed some chips from the kitchen. He noted that the chips had an info tab above them, and he clicked on it, curious. All Might Cheese's LV2. A bag of chips branded by the popular #1 hero All Might. Simple and good for a quick snack. Recovers 5 SP. Interesting. Was the 5 SP per chip, or did he have to eat the whole bag? Shrugging, he popped one into his mouth, enjoying the cheesy flavor as it exploded on his taste buds. Open the main screen, he found out he could minimize it and place it in the corner of his vision when he was cooking so that it wasn't bugging him the whole time, and found the relationships right dab in the center. Without hesitating, he tapped on it. Ex-relationships. Ex-Midoriya Inko. A single mother whose husband had left her for unknown reasons. Extremely kind and loving, she cares deeply for friends and family. Will not hesitate to put others' needs before her own. Cares the most for her son Midoriya Izuku. Relationship status. Family. Vehicles. Says. Age. 26. Level. 24. Quirk. Attraction of small objects. Health. 12500-12525. Stamina. 423-500. Job. Civilian. And. 15. Def. 18. Dex. 21. Int. 20. 20. Wis. 30. Will. 27. Lu. 11. He didn't even need those RP and LP, did he? He scrolled down and noticed an info tab at the bottom of the page. So, the Relationships tab had its own info section? He clicked on it. Xinfo. The Relationships tab will allow you to view those you have deep connections with, allowing them to see your most basic stats and relationship with you. There are 7 basic relationship status options. Family will appear when you are either blood related to that person or are close enough with them that you view them as family and is usually a rank up from friend and lover. This status means you have a deep connection with that person and cherish and trust them deeply. Friend will appear when you have become well acquainted with someone but do not consider them family and is a rank up from acquaintance. This status is more free and you do not necessarily need to have a particularly deep connection with them to have this appear. Acquaintance will appear when you have just become acquainted with someone, and generally appears after a first meeting. This status is the most common of all and is grounds for how the relationship will evolve. Love interest will appear when you develop romantic feelings for this person. This status means that you care deeply for that person and cherish them greatly. Lover will appear when you have confirmed your feelings with your former love interest and both of you have confirmed you have the same feelings for one another and have started dating. This status is on the same level as family. Enemy will appear when you view someone as a potential threat or do not get along with someone on any level. This status is a sign of distrust and distaste for the person filed under it. There are many other forms of relationships, but those mentioned above are likely to be the most common. The relationships that are filed in your quirk is how you perceive others and not necessarily how they think of you. It is possible to see how others think of you if you have the passive skill mind reader. Izuku was pretty sure his brain hurt. There was just so much to learn. He was lucky, however, that his quirk had the info options constantly available or he'd forget everything and never remember. So, mind reader, huh? Sounded like quite the useful skill, though maybe a bit troublesome. He wasn't the biggest fan of knowing what absolutely everyone was thinking at all times. Maybe this would be different? Who knows? Inko walked into the living room, now fully dressed and wide awake. He closed out of his quirk and sent his mom a quick smile. She chuckled and smiled back. Izuku noticed that he was still able to see what seemed to be a health bar on top of her head and her name just above that. When he smiled at her, charm appeared next to her name. He blinked, confused, before remembering that it was his passive skill angelic smile. Oops. Congratulations. Your passive skill angelic smile has grown to LV2. It leveled up? Was he really smiling that much already? Congratulations. Your passive skill critical thinking has grown to LV3. What was with all these levels? His critical thinking had also leveled up when he was cooking, coming to him while he was mumbling about the temperature for cooking eggs. Speaking of which, hey mama, will you teach me how to cook? He asked innocently, looking up at her with beautiful emerald eyes. She blinked in surprise before smiling and nodding. Of course, honey. I'd be glad to. He smiled brightly, inflicting his mother with charm once again. Oops. Well, it's not like he had much of a choice when it came to that. Can you teach me now? He really wanted to get his skill, homemade treats, to the max level because he felt like it'd be an important one for later on in life. Inko simply chuckled at his antics. I'd love to, sweetie, but you have school today. A pout formed on his small lips. He didn't want to go to school. Then a thought hit him. Kaken. He had to tell his best friend about his new quirk. With that, he hurriedly got changed and pestered his mom until they finally got to school, Inko thoroughly amused by her son's attitude. Bye, hun. Have a good day at school. Bye, Mom. Love you. He shouted back as he ran into the building, hurriedly making his way to his classroom. He threw open the classroom door and searched until his eyes landed on the familiar tuft of blonde hair. Izuku ran over to his friend, knocking the other over in a tackle hug. What the F, Deku? Kaken snapped, glaring at his smaller friend as he pushed the green net off of him. Izuku ignored him, green eyes sparkling in excitement. I got my quirk, Kaken. Oh. That got the explosive, no pun intended child's attention, a smirk playing on his lips. What is it? It's called Game of Life, and it basically makes my life like a video game. He excitedly told the blonde, eager to see his friend's reaction. However, instead of any sort of praise or excitement, all he got was an unamused look from glowering red eyes and a huff of air. Quit shitting with me, you useless Deku. There's no way a quirk like that exists. Now, tell me what your quirk really is. But I'm telling the truth. He tried, desperate to get his friend to understand. See, you have a level over your head, it's level 5 by the way, and dash. Shut the F up, you lying piece of shit. Kaken snarled, explosions trickling from his palms. Are you making fun of me? Just making shit up so that you can seem to have a quirk? A cruel smirk curled on to the blonde's lips. Oh, I get it. You're just saying all this because you're actually just a quirkless piece of shit. What? I dash. Shut up, you good-for-nothing Deku. The other cut him off. Just tell the truth, you're quirkless. The entire class was now in on their conversation, egging Kaken, Could Izuku even call him that anymore? While Izuku watched his friend, in horror. Did Kaken really think he was lying? Large tears began to roll down his cheeks and, sure enough, worry appeared next to everyone's name as they slowly began to panic, not knowing what to do while the green-haired child cried. Even Kaken looked slightly distraught. However, before anyone could say anything, the bell rung and it was time for class to start. Izuku slinked over to his seat, tears still falling down, ignoring everyone's worried glances. He stayed silent for the rest of the day, ignoring Kaken's attempts at talking to him and hurrying into his mother's arms. Little did Izuku know that there was a seed of darkness that had planted itself into his heart, feeding slowly off his negative energy. Little did he know that that seed would bloom sooner than anyone would have liked. Little did he know that that same seed would soon decide his fate and the fates of many others. Congratulations! Your passive skill Fake Tears has grown to LV 5. Izuku hadn't stopped crying when he got home. In all honesty, he was starting to get a headache, but he just couldn't stop crying. Inko had cuddled with him as soon as they got home, showering him in love and trying her best to cheer him up. Izuku, sweetheart, do you want anything to eat? Maybe something to drink? He let her words pass in one ear and out the other, not really mentally attached to the world at the moment. She stared at him with wide eyes, concern glimmering in them. He looked over at her, the worry status shining brightly next to her name. Izuku blinked slowly and forced a small smile, ignoring the way his mother's face scrunched up in worry. I'm fine. I'm just a little tired. I'll take a nap. He got up and left before she could say anything, once out of her sight rushing to his room and slamming his bedroom door close. Large tears rolled down his cheeks, salty liquid falling to the floor as he ran to his bed, flinging himself on the soft mattress. He soon fell asleep, the tears not once stopping. It was the middle of the night when Izuku woke up. He blinked, eyes puffy and stuck together with dried tears. He rubbed his eyes and sat up, looking around. The moonlight from his window illuminating the small room dimly. He quietly got up, making his way out of his room. Izuku looked around, not finding his mother in the living room or kitchen. He assumed she must have went to sleep. Not really having anything else to do and not in the mood to go back to bed, Izuku walked to the front door, pulled on his shoes and left the apartment quietly. The cool air of the night nipped at him when he stepped out, making him shiver. He quietly closed their door and made hushed, hurried steps down the staircase and to the sidewalk below. Bright red shoes crunched on loose gravel and dirt as Izuku walked around aimlessly, not really having any place in mind to travel to. He wound up at a beach littered in waste, from empty bags of junk food to cars. Izuku scrunched up his nose in distaste, wondering how in the world this ever got so bad. He decided that it was a decent enough place to relax at, though, seeing as how no one would ever dare to tread it, especially during the middle of the night. Pulling himself on top of a rather large pile in the middle of the beach, though still out of sight from the sidewalk and street, Izuku looked out to the ocean, slightly mesmerized by the quiet lulling of the water. His thoughts began to drift off to the things that had happened earlier that day and tears once again pooled in his eyes. He quickly wiped at them, not wanting to cry anymore. Of course he was still a big crybaby. Too lost in thought, Izuku didn't realize that someone had found him in his lonesome spot atop a pile of rubble. Red hair jutted up in all directions, shining dimly in the moonlight shining on it, purple scars lacing most of the exposed skin. Crystal blue eyes landed on the boy's smaller form, eyebrow raised in curiosity as they made their way closer. Only when they kicked a can into something did Izuku's attention snap over to them. His eyes widened as the other continued to make their way over, stopping in front of him. "What are you doing out here, kid?" they asked, voice rough and gravely, blue eyes piercing through green. Izuku squirmed slightly under his gaze, assuming the other was male due to their voice, and used to being interrogated like this. I couldn't sleep." Well, he wasn't lying, he really couldn't sleep. The other hummed in confirmation before deciding to plop down next to the boy. Izuku sent them a questioning look. They simply shrugged. "Thought I'd keep you company. It's dangerous for a kid to be out here all alone." "Oh." Izuku replied dumbly, not really having anything else to say. They sat in silence, Izuku growing steadily more uncomfortable as time went on. Needing anything to fill the silence, he blurted out the first question that came to mind. What's your quirk? The older boy looked at him like he'd suddenly grown an extra head. Izuku mentally scolded himself for the dumb question. I mean, seriously, who even asks that to someone you've just met? They seemed to take it in stride, though, only chuckling as Izuku's face blossomed into a deep shade of red from embarrassment. You're an interesting kid. Don't people usually ask someone for their name first? He teased, eyebrow raised just slightly. Of course they do. I'm the only person stupid enough to ask someone about their quirk first. Izuku thought before reply. I'm sorry. I didn't mean, I just dash. Calm down, kid, it's cool. They chuckled, leaning forward slightly. So, do you want to know my name or my quirk first? Izuku bowed his head, thoroughly embarrassed and just wishing the ground would swallow him whole. And name please. Another chuckle escaped the older's lips. Name's Dabi. And you? I Izuku. Izuku replied shyly. Midoriya Izuku. Nice to meet you, Izuku. The greenette blushed deeply, not used to anyone other than his mom calling him by his first name. And nice to meet you too, Yi-san. The ginger-haired male waved him off. Don't, Sen, you make me sound old. I'm not that much older than you, you know. Izuku tilted his head, eyes wide in wonder. Really? How old are you then? I'm only 7. Dabi replied, face serious but tone full of mirth. Green eyes widened even more as he gaped at the other. Really? I thought you were, at least in your teens. I mean, why even called me kid, and your voice is deep and dash. It's fine. The other cut off, seemingly amused with the whole situation. I'm used to it. Now would be a wonderful time for the earth to swallow me whole. Izuku mused, embarrassing himself for the second time that night. So, you still want to know about my quirk? Dabi asked, glancing at the smaller. Izuku instantly lit up, previous embarrassment replaced with curiosity. He nodded rapidly. Yeah. Dabi raised an eyebrow, slightly amused by the other's enthusiasm. Well, it's nothing special really. He held out his hand, palm face skyward, and a small blue flame lit up. Izuku watched with starstruck eyes in fascination. That's so cool. It is. The other hummed out, closing his hand into a fist, extinguishing the flame. Well, it's just a simple fire quirk, really. The only special thing about it is that it's blue, which means it's hotter than normal fire, but I don't really think that'd be considered special. He looked back at Izuku. What about you? What's your quirk? The greenette's mood suddenly dropped, a reminder of what happened earlier that day slamming itself back into his mind at full force. Dabi seemed to notice the change in attitude, opening his mouth to take back the words until Izuku smiled sadly at him. Promise you won't laugh? He asked quietly, waiting for Dabi to either refuse or promise and do so anyway. Promise. Dabi replied solemnly, wondering what quirk the quiet child had that made him so weary. Izuku gnawed at his bottom lip, considering his options. He could show the older his quirk, or at least try to tell him about it, and have him laugh at Izuku or yell at him for lying to him. But Dabi had shown him his quirk. It was only fair to repay the favor. And my quirk is called Game of Life A, and it makes it so I am basically living in a video game. He stuttered out, shrinking in on himself, waiting for the backlash of the other. After a few moments, nothing happened. Izuku spared a glance up to see the redhead considering his words seriously, not berating or calling Izuku a liar like the other children had. Dabi hummed, lolling his head to the side. I see. That's an interesting quirk. Izuku looked up at him, eyes wet with tears, hope flashing through them slightly. Really? Dabi looked over at him, looking slightly confused at his question. Yeah. Seems pretty useful to me. I mean, you have stats and stuff, right? Izuku nodded. Well, depending on how you play it, you can totally become overpowered. Those words stuck Izuku in the heart and he began to cry once more. Dabi panicked slightly, not knowing what just happened or how to really deal with it. Izuku shook his head, smiling brightly. Thank you, Dabi. Thank you. Dabi frowned slightly. While he didn't know exactly what happened, he was able to understand that what he said affected Izuku greatly, in a positive way, of course. No problem, Aizu. Izuku squawked, surprised by the nickname. Aizu? Yeah. I'm guessing we're gonna be friends after this, so I supposed I should call you by a better name. I see. Izuku stuttered, tears quickly drying as embarrassment took over. He tried to think of a nickname for Dabi, but couldn't really come up with anything. He supposed he could try something to see if the other would mind. Then, can I call you Dakin? Dabi raised an eyebrow, a small blush creeping over his pale cheeks. Duh, he coughed, rubbing the back of his neck. I guess that's fine. Izuku smiled brightly, his mood instantly brightening. Then Dakin it is. The redhead smirked at him slightly, the action nearly missed because of his scars. Izuku wondered how he got them. Well, he figured it wasn't in his place to ask. At least not yet. The two continued chatting, which meant Izuku chatted and Dabi spoke up here and there. Neither seemed to mind, and the sun slowly rose, basking the two in its warm light. Dabi got up, brushing himself off. Well, I guess we should go home, he said, a pang of disappointment shooting through Izuku's chest. He didn't want to leave just yet. Dabi glanced down at him and, seeing the look of disappointment on the younger's face, quickly suggested, but we can, meet up again. You know, if you want? Izuku beamed and jumped up, dusting himself off. Yeah. Then, Dabi hummed in thought. We could meet here again at 8 maybe? The green-haired child nodded, already excited by the idea. Yeah. I can do that. Dabi chuckled and ruffled the other's hair. See you then. The two parted ways, Izuku jogging back home. Even though he had been bullied for supposedly lying about his quirk and thoroughly embarrassing himself in front of his new friend, he could confidently say that maybe, just maybe, things wouldn't be so bad after all. Dabi and Izuku had met each other often after that. Izuku would ramble on and on about something, while Dabi would nod a few times and throw in his input every once in a while. Thanks to the redhead, Izuku also developed a few more skills. X-passive skills. Lie detector LV. 4, EXP, 420. User is able to detect lies someone says through tone of voice and body language. Innocent eyes LV. 3, EXP, 1015. Upon looking into the user's eyes, people will be put under a sense of security and be more at ease with the user. Will be more susceptible to manipulation. X-active skills. Silver tongue LV. 2, EXP, 910. When in use, targets will be under manipulation for 5 minutes and believe everything the user says and follow any commands. Uses 3 SP. Healing touch LV. 6, EXP, 2430. Upon use, target with regain half of the amount of their max health and will be infected with auto recovery for 2 minutes. Only works if the user is in physical contact with target. Uses 25 SP. Quirk boost LV. 7, EXP, 135. Upon use, target will get a boost to their quirk and double the amount of power usage for 5 minutes. Uses 3 SP. How he got some of these skills? Let's just say he 1. Hated endeavor with a passion. And 2. Hanging out with someone who had no choice but to lie most of his life tends to rub some things off on someone. Though, he was grateful Dabi decided to let Izuku into his life and trusted him so much. Now he can look at Dabi's info and help him improve. X relationships. X Todoroki Tuya Dabi. Todoroki Tuya, better known as Dabi, is the eldest child of pro-hero Endeavor, Todoroki Enji. Has 2 younger brothers and sister as well as a mother who was put into a hospital for unknown reasons. His true past is a mystery but his hatred for Endeavor is well known. Cares deeply for his siblings and mother as well as his friends. Relationship status. Best friend. RP, 9100. FP, 8100. LP, 1100. Says. Age, 7. Level, 11. Quirk. Cremation. Health, 725 1500. Stamina, 200 375. Job, ambiguous. Estur, 24. And 28. Def, 29. Dex, 19. And 20. Cha 18. Wis 10. Will 22. Honestly, Izuku was really worried about his friend's LU stat. It was dangerously low, even lower than Izuku's when he was only level 1. That wasn't good. He really wished that there was a way he could help Dabi with that. Though Dabi was really strong and defensive. How the redhead got that way made Izuku's blood boil, but it couldn't be helped with the kind of life he was living. Izuku swears that he'll help him break free from that flaming garbage man's grasp. Though, looking at Dabi's relationship status, Izuku faintly remembered that what was shown was only what he personally thought of the fire quirk user. It's not necessarily what Dabi thought of him, which made him anxious. Clearly he thought highly of the other, but what if he didn't think the same about him? That's what happened with Bakugu, and look at what happened then. Ex-relationships. Ex-Bakugu Katsuki. A prideful boy with a powerful quirk. Shown to have a superiority complex, but his true feelings might be hidden under an angry exterior. Relationship status. Friend? RP, 89-100. FP, 63-100. LP, 0-100. Says, information is locked. Please obtain the relationship friend to view. Izuku doesn't even know what the question mark behind the friend's status even means. Does he think of Bakugu as a friend? I mean, he thinks he does? Probably. And what does it mean, please obtain friend status? Isn't that what Bakugu is under? Or does it mean that Bakugu has to think of him as a friend in order to view? Does Dabi think of him as a friend, then? What about Mom? Does it automatically not count because she's family? What are the requirements then? All in all, Izuku had a very fun and adventurous time with Dabi. He even told his mom about him and she cried because he'd finally made a real friend. The two even met after constant coaxing from Izuku, and now Mom thinks of the redhead as her own son as well. He's such a well-behaved child. I'm so happy you're friends with him. She'd said the first time he brought the other over. And let's not get into the overly embarrassing stories and photos she'd shared with him. That's a nightmare he'd rather never revisit, thanks. Now the two were sitting on the beach once more, chatting idly and watching the sunset. I don't get it. Izuku murmured as he kicked at what little sand he could. How can I get the mind reader ability? It's not like I can suddenly just go around reading minds. What even are the requirements? Dabi hummed non-committally, watching the boy in what appeared to be disinterest, but Izuku knew he just had a mild case of resting bitch face. I don't know. Helpful. Izuku deadpanned. Dabi smirked at him. Thanks, I try. Izuku rolled his eyes and was about to complain about it for the nth time when words suddenly popped up out of nowhere, startling him. Dabi had long gotten used to Izuku reading seemingly nothing, so he just leaned back, waiting for his friend to finish. New quest. Objective, save Dabi. A disastrous event is about to come, and Dabi will be killed if nothing is done. Accompany Dabi home and save him. Rewards. Plus 1000 EXP. Plus new skill mind reader. Plus 10 RP with Dabi. Plus 10 FP with Dabi. Plus 10 LP with Dabi. Bonus. Save. Plus 500 EXP. Plus 40 RP with Dabi. Plus 40 FP with Dabi. Plus 40 LP with Dabi. Plus 50 RP with? Plus 20 FP with? Plus 20 LP with? Will you accept? Izuku only read the objective and felt panic rise in his throat, hurriedly accepting without bothering to read after that. How could he possibly allow his new friend to be hurt? He turned to Dabi, who flinched at the greenette's sudden movements and wide, panicked eyes. Dabi, can I spend the night at your place? He asked, breaths coming in quick, heart pounding against his ribs. Dabi frowned, looking anxious. I don't know, you know that dash. Please, Izuku breathed out, reaching out and grabbing the other's hand, shaking as tears threatened to pool out of his eyes. Watching his friend trembling, looking as pale as a sheet of paper, as if he knew something terrible was about to happen, Dabi could only reluctantly accept. He didn't want his friend to get hurt, but he couldn't leave him alone when he looked like that. Hopefully nothing would go wrong. It didn't take much to convince his mom to let him stay the night. In fact, If Izuku were to be completely honest, Inko practically threw him out the door after hurrying him to get ready after even mentioning the idea of a sleepover with Dabi. Luckily, he actually got the older to agree, or else he'd have been thrown out of his home for no reason. So, there he was, standing in front of a rather impressive Japanese-styled home, forcing himself to not tremble like a leaf as he waited for the redhead to open the front door. His father, or as the other called him, SPRM donor, Izuku's not sure what that means, was out patrolling and thus wasn't home, much to the Greenet's relief. As he thought of plausible ways to inconvenience the pro-hero, the door opened and a girl popped her head out, staring at Izuku with wide eyes. Izuku's gaze traveled over her white hair with specks of red and square glasses on her face, her eyes a sort of grayish turquoise. The two stared at each other before she spoke up, her voice soft and timid. "Hello? Are you Nisen's friend?" Unable to say anything, Izuku nodded, mouth dry and throat tightened. Based on her appearance, she must be Fuyumi, Dabi's younger sister. It had taken a while for the redhead to disclose his siblings' names, and it made Izuku feel honored once he did. It just made him feel that the elder trusted him, which was always a nice feeling. Fuyumi welcomed him in, a small smile on her lips. "Please come it. Nisen talks about you quite a bit. The kind, gullible, tiny child." Izuku puffed out his cheeks. "I'm not tiny," he grumbled, earning a small chuckle from the other. "Nisan's in his room at the moment. Would you like me to?" She trailed off, but her offer was obvious. He nodded and the two walked side by side, neither speaking, silent but not uncomfortable. The two stopped in front of a door about halfway into the house, Izuku admiring the traditional styling of the house, as Fuyumi knocked on the door. "Niece and your friends here," she called out softly, Izuku frowning as she had never spoken above a soft murmur. Was it because she'd been forced to otherwise? He didn't want to continue on that train of thought. "Sheet already? I thought it was if..." The sound of someone falling down and bumping into things could be heard from behind the door, making Izuku wince slightly. "Nisen, language." Fuyumi chided lightly, but there was no force to her words. She even had a slightly fond smile on her lips. After a few more moments of noise, Dabi threw open his door, Fuyumi having pulled Izuku back in advance, anticipating the action. He was grateful for that, otherwise he would have gotten a face full of door, and that was never fun. Dabi glanced at Izuku before looking at his sister. "Sorry about that, Fuyumi. I thought he was supposed to come by later." She smiled softly, shaking her head. "It's fine. Have fun." With a wave, she left. Izuku entered Dabi's room after he stepped aside to let him in, muttering under his breath, "I texted you I was here." Dabi shot him an apologetic smile. "Sorry, my phone fell and broke." Izuku knew that he was lying, and Dabi knew that he knew, but neither spoke out about it. What else could they possibly do? So, instead, the two began to talk. Well, it was mostly Izuku, about anything and everything, Dabi mostly listening and nodding along. Neither of Dabi's brothers showed up when Izuku had walked to Dabi's room, but he never asked, and Dabi never commented on them. Despite knowing their names, the green-haired boy knew basically nothing else about them, as the older refused to disclose such personal information. He didn't mind. It wasn't his place to meddle. If Dabi was comfortable with him knowing, he'd say so. Otherwise, Izuku would simply be there, a willing ear to listen. The day passed quickly and Izuku saw no signs of anything bad happening. No villains, no accidents, no endeavor. It passed by like any normal day and he was starting to worry as the moon rose and the sky darkened, the stars appearing and lighting the night sky. What was going on? Was it a red herring? Was he being too paranoid? His quirk specifically told him that his first friend in a long time was going to die if he didn't come. Even if it was even slightly exaggerated, Izuku would rather risk it than losing the first person other than his mom to bring light into his life. He might be exaggerating as he was only a small child, but he cared deeply for his friend. And no matter what, he would protect him. So, when the moon rose to the top of the sky and the sky was a pitch black filled with sprinkles of light from the stars, Izuku and Dabi got washed up and Izuku settled into his sleeping bag, waiting for his friend to fall asleep. Once he heard the soft snores, He opened his eyes and sat up, on edge for any and all potential threats. He forced his ears to listen to every little sound and his eyes to focus on whatever they could, leaving no detail out. As he did this, his quirk activated, startling him. Congratulations! Your passive skill critical thinking has grown to LV9. Congratulations! You have unlocked the skill Third Eye. Active skill, Third Eye LV1. Upon use of the skill, all of the user's sense will be expanded and sight and hearing can be used to up to 50 feet from user's location, uses 10 SP every 30 seconds. Izuku quickly closed the text box before hastily using his new skill. He was disoriented with the sudden change, how much he was able to see and hear, his skin feeling way too sensitive, how his clothes brushed against his way too sensitive nerves, how he tasted what he ate for dinner last week despite not even remembering it until now. Feeling overwhelmed, he turned it off, panting. He was relieved when everything returned to normal, but he grit his teeth at how he knew he needed that skill in order to protect Dabi. It was uncomfortable, so uncomfortable, but Izuku knew it would help. He needed it. So, he activated it again, forcing himself to overcome the uncomfortable sensation, to ignore the head-splitting pain from hearing too much, from seeing too much. Izuku had almost an eagle-eye view of everything around him, and he felt small, panic threatening to clog his throat, to prevent him from breathing. Again he forced it down. He couldn't panic now. Not when so much was on the line. So, he sat there, watching, listening. 10 minutes passed before Izuku was forced to turn the skill off. He was losing too much SP too fast, making him feel faint and sick. He glanced at his SP and grimaced. Midoriya Izuku. Level 7. Quirk, Game of Life. Health, 714-725. Stamina, 5275. Job, Ambiguous. EXP, 271-428. 7. Int, 11. Wis, 10. He had lost some prior to using the skill and now he was paying the price. Izuku felt tears form in his eyes as frustration bubbled in his skin. Useless, he was useless. What good was a god-tier skill if he couldn't even use it for that long? As he berated himself, a chill ran down his spine and he spun around, the movement jostling his already upset stomach, everything he'd eaten that day threatening to spill out as his head pounded. Green eyes met black as two people stared at each other, one set determined and the other panicked, one a child and the other a man. Izuku stared as the man met his eyes for a few moments before cursing. Sheet, no one told us another kid was going to be here today? Whatever. It doesn't matter. He heard the man curse before his fingernails grew to sharp points and rushed at him. Izuku panicked and stumbled backwards, mouth open but no sound coming out. He glanced at Dabi and saw that the other was still sleeping, curious as to why only to have a smell suddenly hit his nose. Why didn't I smell this before? He looked back at the man to see that he'd opened a small bottle, pink gas slowly pouring out from it. That's why, it was bottled up. Izuku felt his conscience slowly pull away from him, and he understood the purpose of the slightly sweet scent. It was to put them asleep. He fought to keep his eyes open, not wanting to fall asleep, sluggishly dodging the intruder's attack, his arm being nicked in the process. A sudden notification popped up, and he cursed his bad timing. Congratulations! You have unlocked the skill Sleep Resistance. Passive skill, Sleep Resistance LV1. When user is introduced to sleep-inducing situations, user takes longer to fall asleep, unlock full potential at max level. While grateful, now is definitely the wrong time for this. So, Izuku dodged another hit, though his cheek was cut. Congratulations! You have unlocked the skill Agile Step. Passive skill, Agile Step LV1. User is faster and has better reflexes, unlock full potential at max level. Well, that was straight to the point. With his new skills, Izuku found it easier to dodge the intruder while also slowly feeling more and more awake. Both skills skyrocketed in levels and Izuku could tell that the man was getting more and more irritated. The F is going on? He growled, his bottle having run out of the weird scent a short while ago. Why haven't you fallen asleep yet? Izuku ignored the man's words and used his only attacking moves, sweeping kick to knock the man off his feet before hitting him once with power kick. He succeeded in knocking the man out as he fell on the back of his head, making a sickening crack, but now he barely had the energy to stay on his feet. He felt dizzy and the world spun as he tottered in place, while threatening to spill out. His quirk popped up once again, though he was barely able to read what it said. Congratulations! You have completed the quest Save Dabi. Rewards. Plus 1000 EXP. Plus new skill Mind Reader. Plus 10 RP with Dabi. Plus 10 FP with Dabi. Plus 10 LP with Dabi. Warning! Conditions for bonus not completed. Complete quest anyway? Izuku sluggishly tapped no. If there was someone else that needed saving, he wouldn't leave them behind. Congratulations! You have leveled up to LV 8. You have gained 1 AP. Congratulations! You have leveled up to LV 9. You have gained 1 AP. Midoriya Izuku. Level 9. Quirk, Game of Life. Health, 714,800. Stamina, 2,325. Job, Ambiguous. EXP, 89,911. Hint, 11. Def, 13. Hint, 15. Cha, 11. Was 12. 11. Lu, 9. 6. Congratulations! Your active skill Sweeping Kick has grown to LV 3. Congratulations! Your active skill Power Kick has grown to LV 2. Izuku was fighting to stay awake, his quirk sending one last notification. Warning: SP levels below recommended amount. Starting quirk reboot in 3 minutes. Upon seeing that, Izuku began to panic. He hurried out of the room and began searching around the house for any potential danger. As he forced his legs to move, he smelled something burning and hurried to where it was coming from. He was just in time to see another man hurry out of the bedroom window as a desk lit ablaze, quickly catching the wall on fire. Izuku had no time as he grabbed the small body on the bed, hurriedly shaking them awake. It took way too long as he began to drag them out, but was barely able to get them off the bed before collapsing. He panted, the smoke from the fire entering his lungs, causing him to cough harshly. Bleary dual-colored eyes blinked away, much to Izuku's relief, as they looked over at him. Once they caught sight of the fire behind him, the other jumped up, now wide awake. What dash? Izuku had no time to process their expression or tone of voice as he cut them off. Intruders! Sleep stuff! Hurry! Out! He panted, coughing even more as he spoke, his eyes slowly closing. What? No, don't close your eyes. Izuku felt that the other's voice was muddled, hard to distinguish as he felt his body being dragged, the other clearly having a hard time moving him. Izuku wasn't asleep, but he wasn't awake either. He was in a state in between, and he heard the person dragging him yelling, slowly waking up everyone else. Before he knew it, he was outside, the wind hitting his face as he essayed in fresh air, panicked voices talking around him as the sounds of sirens blared in the distance. Aizu? Hey Aizu, open your eyes. The sound of Dabi's voice entered his ears. He didn't want to worry his friend, so he forced his eyes open, though his eyelids drooped heavily. Dabi stared at him in poorly concealed worry as Fuyumi and a boy around his height stared at him, Fuyumi's eyes teary while the boy's eyebrows bunched up, worry clear in his mismatched eyes. Wasn't there another? He asked, voice hoarse. Natsuo went over to a friend's house. Dabi quickly explained. Ah, so that's why Izuku didn't see him before. Hey, don't close your eyes. Stay awake. Dabi sounded so worried, but why? It's not like Izuku was going to die. He was just tired. He looked up and saw a portal opening behind the other small boy, and Izuku had no time to think as he used the last of his strength to push the red and white-haired boy out of the way, the hand coming out from the purple-black portal grabbing a hold of him instead of the other. Fuyumi cried out as Dabi shouted, reaching out for his friend. The last thing Izuku saw was another pop-up from his quirk before the darkness took hold of him, his consciousness fading. Congratulations! You have achieved the bonus requirements. Bonus, Save Todoroki Shudo. Plus 500 EXP. Plus 40 RP with Dabi. Plus 40 FP with Dabi. Plus 40 LP with Dabi. Plus 50 RP with Todoroki Shudo. Plus 20 FP with Todoroki Shudo. Plus 20 LP with Todoroki Shudo. Dabi stared at where his friend once was, hand trembling as it remained outstretched, reminding him of his failure to grab him back before being unrightfully captured, kidnapped. Ni-san, Fuyumi whispered, giving him a worried look at his outright distraught expression. Shudo remained silent, unable to say anything to his older brother, because it was his fault. He was the reason his older brother's friend was kidnapped. A kid who hardly looked any older than he did. A person who had saved him. They hadn't met before, Shudo hadn't done anything for him, but he still saved him. Shudo couldn't help the onslaught of guilt stabbing at his heart, threatening to choke him, unable to look his older brother in the face. Dabi simply stared, mind blank for a few moments before letting out an ear-piercing scream. Fuyumi jumped, startled, while Shudo merely flinched. He didn't care his best friend was gone. That gullible, too friendly for his own good, selfless idiot was gone, and Dabi couldn't do anything about it. Let's call the police first, okay? Fuyumi suggested, leading her brothers into the neighbor's house. Once she explained the situation, the neighbors practically dragged the children inside, hurriedly calling the police, Shudo and Dabi unresponsive to any questioning, leaving Fuyumi to negotiate for them. Once the police arrived, they arrested the person who was knocked out inside, courtesy of Izuku, and questioned the kids, only Fuyumi answering once again. Dabi couldn't help but replaying the last few moments in his head, Izuku looking up at him with an exhausted expression only for it to change into a determined frown as he forced himself to move and push Shudo out of the way, getting kidnapped in his place. He didn't know what he was feeling at the moment. Fear, rage, anxiety, resentment? The last one almost startled him. What was he resentful about? That Shudo had been saved? That Izuku had taken his place? That Izuku was gone while he was still here? He didn't know. Dabi knew that it wasn't Shudo's fault, that he couldn't have possibly known that there would be an attempt at his own being. He knew that he should be happy that his family, his own brother, was still here. But Dabi couldn't help but being angry at him. Why was it Izuku? The only person to not look at him and see a monster? Dabi knew it was ridiculous and that he wasn't really angry with Shudo. No, he was angry with himself. You stupid idiot, he snapped at himself, you were right there. You were right. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry at his own pathetic display. Dabi closed his eyes, an unwilling memory resurfacing. Tuya dry heaved, unable to produce any more bile to upheave as Endeavor stood in front of him, glaring down at him with hate-filled eyes. Useless. The Hellflame hero growled, rotating his wrists to work out the canis. Get up. You'd be useless in a battle at this rate. I don't remember raising such a pathetic thing. Tuya coughed, shakily getting back up, tears and snot running down his face as his body ached, bones creaking in protest, his face beaten and bruised. He glanced up at the man towering in front of him, then back to the door slightly ajar, startling slightly at what he saw. Two pairs of eyes stared at him worriedly, one pair in tears and the other determined not to cry. His younger siblings, Fuyumi and Natsuo, were a year younger than him, both being 3. They were fraternal twins, both taking more after their mother than father, unlike Tuya. His mother was also Prgnt with a 4th child, set to be born sometime this year. Tuya didn't know how he felt about that. Should he want them to become the shitstain's masterpiece, freeing him? He shook his head, quickly ridding himself of the thought. He'll be fine. He would rather it be him than them. His father usually trained Tuya late at night, when everyone else was asleep, or early in the morning, before everyone else was awake, something Tuya was usually grateful for. I don't want any of them to see me like this. However, today was different. It was a school holiday and Endeavor unfortunately had a few days off, so that meant more training. And because of that, training wasn't just limited to the morning or night. It carried on throughout the day. It was fine. He'd been dealing with this hellish torture disguised as training for a little over a year, his quirk being strong enough to appear at the age of 3. It wasn't like it was something he wasn't already used to at this point. So, he endured, being beaten black and blue to the point where he was certain he had injured his leg and would be sporting a new black eye. But it was fine. His mother had taken Fuyumi and Natsuo out, and tried to convince Endeavor to let Tuya out as well, but the man refused. Tuya let her know that it was alright, giving her a silent look that she should keep the other two as busy as she possibly could for today, a hint she got but was entirely displeased with. However, she also knew that it was pointless arguing with the flaming trash can, so she left, giving Tuya one last quick hug before leaving. Tuya sent them off with a slight smile and wave, but once the door closed behind them, he was dragged off, repeating the vicious cycle he'd lived with for so long now. He glanced out the window, noting that it was indeed nighttime and that they should be asleep. Why were they here? Panic rose in his throat as he sent them a quick look that practically shouted, "Leave." "Where are you looking, boy?" Endeavor shouted, sending another punch at his face, slamming into his nose and causing his to slam into the back wall. Tuya bit his tongue to prevent himself from screaming in pain, his nose throbbing as blood dribbled out of it, most likely broken. Fuyumi gasped, covering her mouth while Natsuo stared at his older brother with wide eyes, trembling slightly. Endeavor didn't move from his spot, simply glowering at the boy. "Get up. We're not done yet." Tuya struggled to get up, body shaking heavily as his legs constantly continued to give out every time he tried to stand up. Endeavor growled after the fourth time he fell back down, storming over to him only to be stopped by a small body in his way. Tuya glanced up and felt his breath catch in his throat when he saw Natsuo standing in between him and the pro, small body shaking but glare determined. "Leave me alone," he shouted. Endeavor merely glanced at him. "Move out of my way." Natsuo shook his head, stubbornly refusing to move. Tuya tensed when he noticed Endeavor clench his fists, seeing a slight tremor of rage. That wasn't a request. He pushed past the child, but Natsuo clung to his leg. "Leave me alone." Tuya moved before he could think, ignoring his own pain when he noticed the air begin to heat up immensely all too quickly, shouting, "Look out!" Pushing Natsuo out of the way, Tuya was hit with a tornado of fire, letting out a blood-curdling screech of pain, the flames peeling away his skin and the smell of burnt flesh quickly flooding the room. As the flames died out, leaving him all too cold, the last thing Tuya saw was Natsuo's crying face and Endeavor's cold eyes, body falling to the ground as he blacked out. When Tuya woke up, he saw his mother's face covered in tears, apologizing to him for leaving him alone with that man, for not trying harder to help him. Tuya simply stared at her impassively, body stiff and wrapped head to toe in bandages. It took months for him to completely heal and remove the bandages, and when he did, the first thing he heard was his mother's screams. It hurt, but looking at himself in the mirror, he understood. He was Dabi. Dabi snapped his eyes open, looking around in a panic. He looked down and saw Izuku staring up at him, wide green eyes filled with worry. "Dakin, are you all right? You looked like you were having a nightmare." "What dash?" he tried, but speaking made him feel like sandpaper was rubbing against the back of his throat, mouth dry and his own tongue leaving a bitter taste. He swallowed shallowly, trying again. "What happened?" "You were napping and suddenly started to thrash around and I was really worried because you wouldn't wake up and you were scratching at your arms and dash," Izuku said, words tumbling from his mouth like a river, almost too fast for Dabi to keep up with, but he got the gist of it. "I got it," he said, interrupting the other boy. "Sorry, I guess." Izuku blinked owlishly, stunned, before sending him a blinding smile. "It's fine really. I'm more glad that you're okay." Dabi felt his heart squeeze at that. Other than his siblings and mother, no one really cared much about him. When anyone looked his way, they were either full of pity or fear, the scars on his body being the main cause of this. He heard more than once people calling him a freak or monster, disgust clear in their voices as they whispered behind his back. Those were fine. He could ignore those for the most part. However, it was the looks and words of pity that got to him the most. Even his own family weren't excluded. No, their gazes of pity were much, much worse. "Oh, poor thing," he would hear. "Look at him. Who could have done such a thing to such a small child?" He's hardly an elementary school student and yet he's already been through so much, poor child. That must hurt a lot, the poor thing. Poor thing. Poor thing. Poor thing. Poor monster. Dakin? A timid voice snapped him out of his thoughts. He glanced at Izuku, whose worried frown only deepened. Are you sure you're all right? Dabi eyed him, staring into the emerald orbs, searching for any amount of pity, only to find none. Just pure, honest concern. He didn't look at him like he was made of glass, or that he was a freak of nature. Aizu, he whispered, rolling his tongue in his mouth, unsure of how he wanted to say this. What do you think of me? Izuku blinked slowly, his doe look innocent and cute. Did you think of you? Why, you're really kind, and you have an amazing quirk. Yo, you might be a bit snarky at times, but I know you mean well. The green-haired boy began to blush deeply, embarrassment clear on his face as he began to ramble. You're really strong, you don't mind my mumbling, though you have told me to shut up a few times, but you said it playfully and didn't mean it in a bad way. You're also really cool. He paused, glancing up at the redhead before looking back down, voice barely above a whisper as he finished, and you're my hero. The onslaught of positivity his friend, are they friends? He'd like to think so, was way too much and much more than he ever expected, catching the fire user off guard. Dabi raised a hand and covered his face, forcing himself to rein in the fire threatening to spill out due to his embarrassment and the tears that threatened to run down his cheeks from his gratitude. He had stared at Izuku's face, into the forest green eyes even if they didn't look back, and he knew that he was 100% serious in everything he said. Your hero? He voiced out hoarsely, ignoring the cracking in his tone. Why? He pried his fingers open slightly to see the other boy's expression, watching as that same sincere gaze looked back up at him, a small, but oh so genuine as he said, because you saved me. And with that, Dabi cried. Dabi opened his eyes, slowly getting up, barely taking note that he had somehow fallen asleep and was resting on his bed in his room. The room where he was asleep doing nothing while Izuku fought for his life. He shook the thought from his head, clenching his fists. No, I'll do better. I'll be better. And I'll save him. He looked out the window. I promise I'll save you, Izuku. I'll be the hero you deserve. He wasn't able to say the words he'd been holding back ever since Izuku told Dabi that he was his hero. And now, it left a bitter taste in his mouth, but he swore he'd get his friend back. Dabi swore that, when he does, he'll tell him. For the person who looked at him and saw him, not a broken child nor a hideous monster, but a living, breathing human, Dabi would repeat those same words back to him. Izuku, you're my hero. Quirk reboot successful. Updating files. Congratulations. Your passive skill sleep resistance grown to LV2. Congratulations. Your passive skill agile step has grown to LV2. Congratulations. You have changed job class from ambiguous to hero. Congratulations. You have gained a new relationship title. Please check the Relationships tab for more information. Congratulations. You have unlocked the skill Mind Reader. Passive skill, Mind Reader LV1. User is able to read the mind of anyone they make eye contact with. Eye contact is required for user to be able to read a target's mind. Also unlocks the user's ability to see what others think of them at any time in the Relationships tab. Warning, new update is available. Update now? When Izuku awoke, he was stupefied by the barrage of messages he got from his quirk. He was hardly even able to open his eyes or get a grasp of his situation, and now his quirk wanted him to be able to think properly with a mind practically made of putty at the moment. And what was that last thing? An update? Now, of all times? He groggily chose no, as he didn't know where he was or how safe his situation was at the moment. As he squirmed, he heard people begin to talk. Oh, he's finally awake? Took him long enough. This sheet's not even the one we were ordered to get. Fing bullshit. Well, he's not too bad looking. I'm sure he'll be a fine cutie when he grows up. Ew, that's gross, man. They laughed as a shiver ran down Izuku's spine. He wasn't all too sure what they were talking about, but he knew it couldn't have been anything good. He tried to pick out how many there were, so far only hearing 3 different voices, all male from what he could tell. Well, what do we do now? Guy 1 asked. Guy 2, he was with the kid we were supposed to get, right? Maybe we can use him as leverage. Guy 3, yeah, but Kenshi's gonna be here soon. Kenshi? Izuku strained his ears, listening intently, hardly daring to even breathe. Guy 2, you sure you should be saying that? Ain't the kid already awake? Guy 3, and what's he gonna do? He's already tied up and blindfolded. He's not going anywhere. Izuku snapped his eyes open to find out that, yes, he was indeed blindfolded, and twitched his arms and legs to find that they were also indeed tied up. He forced down the panic that rose in the back of his throat. Now is not the time. As the trio continued to bicker, Izuku tried to listen for any clues that might help him, the only major ones he had gotten thus far being that Dabi's youngest brother was indeed the target for the kidnapping and that it was ordered by some guy named Kenshi. They didn't seem to care whether he was awake or not, saying a lot of things he couldn't quite understand but he knew was bad. After a long while, he would guess about an hour, Izuku heard the sound of a metal door opening, the bolts screeching a high-pitched tune that grated on his ears. He clenched his teeth, squeezing his eyes closed at the sound, letting out a small puff of relief once it stopped. However, his breath caught in his throat once he heard the newcomer speak. What do you have here? The voice sounded so familiar, but he couldn't put his finger on it. This isn't the kid I paid for you fuckers to catch. Sorry, this kid pushed him out of the way before we could grab him. Guy 1 stuttered, clearly nervous. This must be the mysterious Then Izuku thought to himself. That's so, Kenshi hummed, giving Izuku a harsh kick, surprising the child, letting out a loud gasp. A friend, then? That's what we were thinking. Guy 3 hurriedly agreed. Izuku was roughly grabbed by his hair and picked up, the blindfold torn off his face, and he was forced to squint his eyes at the sudden intrusion of light. After blinking the blurriness from his vision, he finally got a good look at this person and felt his heart drop. Metal Knight, he breathed, unable to come to grasp with what he was seeing. Kenshi, or better known as the metallic hero, Metal Knight, pet an eyebrow, almost amused by his reaction. So you know of me, huh? But why? Wasn't he a hero? Kenshi clicked his tongue. Typical question. I suppose it wouldn't hurt to let you know, since you're not bound to live much longer anyway. I hate Endeavor's guts, and thought I'd give him a good scare by killing off his most prized possession. Izuku felt his blood run cold. They wanted to kill Dabi's brother? A child? A plain-looking man with short hair side-eyed Kenshi warily, nervously rubbing his hands together as he spoke. Kenshi, shouldn't we deal with the kid, like, now? The sooner the better, right? Kenshi gave a non-committal hum, staring blankly at Izuku, and Izuku did his best to suppress a shiver, red eyes staring into panicked green. After a few moments, the hero smirked, causing Izuku to tremble slightly. You know what? I think I have a better idea. And that would be? Guy 2 prompted cautiously. Kenshi's smirk grew into a full-blown maniacal grin, and Izuku could feel a pool of dread grow in the pit of his stomach. Lately, I've been feeling sort of pent up from doing such a thankless job all the time. I need a little pick-me-up, you know what I'm saying? Guy 1 blanches. He's a child. Not in that way, you fucking just. Kenshi snapped. At least not yet. I'm not into pedophilia either. I just need a good punching bag, and I've got the perfect candidate right here. Izuku couldn't fully understand the conversation going on, but once he heard punching bag, he instantly froze, knowing full well what was going to happen. He stared, wide-eyed, as Kenshi smiled at him, a look he might have once found gentle now terrifying. Congrats, little guy, the pro-hero practically purred, the gnawing feeling of dread inside of Izuku growing. Guess you get to live a little while longer yet. Izuku gets the feeling that he'd rather be dead. Shit. All of this effing bullshit. Congratulations. Your passive skill pain reduction has grown to LV. 3. Congratulations. Your passive skill fake tears has grown to LV. 7. Izuku flew across the room, slamming into the metal wall of the warehouse, black spots dotting his vision as a new bruise formed over a slightly older one, though it had yet to hardly heal. It had already been around 3 weeks since being kidnapped, and Izuku had been subjected to brutal beatings every single day, Kenshi not missing out even once to relieve himself of his pent-up frustrations of his small body, unable to fight back. It wasn't that Izuku hadn't tried. He did. For the first couple of days. However, he was inexperienced, and with the pro's years of training and sturdy body, he wouldn't have done much with his childish strength. It also only made the beatings worse, so Izuku had given up quickly. Through it all, Izuku had actually gained a new skill 2 weeks in, pain reduction, a skill he was entirely grateful for as it helped ease the pain even just a little bit. Passive skill, pain reduction LV3. The pain the user feels is reduced by a quarter. Unlock full potential at max level. It was nice to have, even if it didn't help all too much in the long run as he was beaten every day for hours on end, which negated the pain reduction pretty much entirely. But it was the thought that counted, he supposed. He also hadn't gotten any time where he was safe enough to check out the update, as he was either knocked unconscious from the beating or in the middle of a beating. He'd also maxed out his critical thinking skill as well, so that's a plus. Izuku was pulled from his musing as Kenshi snagged him by his hair, roughly pulling him up to look him in the face, red eyes crazed with anger. All of them are so effing useless. And that giant firefucker, he thinks he's so cool. Does he think he's effing God? Another punch to the face, the sound of bones snapping not phasing either of them as Kenshi threw the child to the ground, stomping on his arms, breaking one of them, Izuku biting his lips to keep himself from screaming out. Can he not go one FNG day without thinking he's above everyone else? Throughout his time here, Izuku had thoroughly learned Kenshi's hatred for the number 2 hero, which was the only thing the two could agree on. Kenshi hissed, ruffling his hair before glancing down at Izuku. Hey, Beach, you got some sort of healing quirk, don't ya? During the weeks, Izuku had used his healing touch to mend broken bones, though he was careful about the amount of times he used it because getting anything to replenish his SP, such as food, were few and far between. In fact, Izuku wondered when the last time he ate was. I've been thinking we've been doing this all wrong, Kenshi continued, unbothered with Izuku's despondency. Since you're such an interesting toy, why not we make things more fun? Izuku couldn't stop the shiver from running up his spine. Kenshi grabbed him, the boy not even putting up a fight as he was thrown into the chair he was tied to when he was first brought there. He was once again strapped in, but this time by Kenshi's quirk, metal slamming over his wrists and ankles, keeping him in place. You know, the pro began, slowly circling him. By now, you'd think there would be heroes searching up and down for your location. A kidnapping case, and one taken near a pro hero's house of all places? Normally that'd call for at least some sort of commotion. But do you know what? Izuku didn't answer him. Nobody's looking for you. Those words, they hurt. Kenshi noticed his flinched and grinned, seemingly happy to finally get a response out of the boy. It's crazy, right? No news outlet speaking out for you, no wanted posters. I still don't even know your name. And you know what that tells me? Izuku began to tremble, tears threatening to spill out once more. You're worthless. Nobody's looking for you because no one cares. That's not true. Izuku finally broke, voice hoarse from weeks of disuse. Kenshi sneered at him. Not true? Then tell me, boy, why no hero has come to your rescue. You've been missing for 3 weeks. You'd at least hear some commotion if people actually cared where you were. He opened his mouth to scream, to shout at him that it was not true, but he was cut off when a knife appeared out of nowhere, slamming down on his index and middle fingers on his left hand. He couldn't help it. Izuku screamed. The sounds erupted from his throat as blood gushed from his open wounds, Kenshi smiling like a madman at him, enjoying every bit of suffering Izuku was feeling. They don't care. Kenshi cheered, twirling the knife in his hand before slamming it into his hand. If they did, they'd come save you, right? Poor lost child. Izuku felt lightheaded as the man's words muddled together, his vision blurring as tears ran down his cheeks like a broken dam. It hurt. It hurt, it hurt, it hurt. You deserve it, you know? Kenshi continued. If you hadn't interrupted me, you wouldn't be here right now. Everything that had led up to this point, it's all fault. Izuku knew he was lying, that it couldn't have possibly been his fault, but his mind began to wonder. Was it? Just imagine. You at home with your loving, Kenshi said, loving in the most sarcastic way possible, family. You'd be safe, unharmed. But no. You just had to play the hero. And look where it led you. Was it his fault? He just wanted to save Dabi. Your family probably doesn't even love you. Kenshi snarled. A child like you, who would possibly ever love you? Izuku snapped his head up and for a split second, he saw his mom. He saw Inko's usually warm green eyes staring at him coldly, a gaze full of contempt and disdain. He knew it was dumb, that it was just a trick of his mind, but it stung. Kenshi continued to slice at his arms, deliberately making it as slow and as painful as possible as he continued his jeering. Just imagine, they'd be so much happier without you. A life without a worthless, useless leech. And Izuku began to hear Inko's voice. The man's low voice belled into a cold, indifferent high tone, causing his heart to drop. And no, he whimpered, wanting to refuse it, wanting to believe that he was loved. Kenshi merely sneered at him. No? With such a useless quirk like yours, what point would there be to keep you? It's only because they birthed you that they're still caring for you. With a puny quirk like yours, it would have been no different if you were quirkless. Izuku could hear Katsuki's words playing in his mind. Are you making fun of me? Just making shit up so that you can seem to have a quirk? Oh, I get it. You're just saying all this because you're actually just a quirkless piece of shit. While you could have avoided this by staying out of someone else's business, Kenshi put the final nail in the coffin, a cruel smile playing on his lips as he said lowly, whispering in Izuku's ear, everything would be so much better if you hadn't been born at all. After all, this is all fault. And Izuku fainted. Izuku, he heard his mother's sweet voice, coaxing him to wake up. He does. Slowly opening his eyes, Izuku is met with a serene scene. He is sat at home, on the couch in the living room, the television playing an old-time movie, the name of which eludes Izuku, and Inko sat next to him, smiling at him lovingly. She pushed a stray hair from his face, chuckling indulgently as she lightly chastised him. Wake up, sleepyhead. You said you wanted to watch my favorite childhood movie, didn't you? He looks up at her, blinking owlishly, before looking down at himself. He seemed smaller, somehow. His mind was fuzzy. What had he been doing up until this point? He couldn't remember. Something about this didn't feel quite right. Mom, he said carefully. You're actually here, right? She raised an eyebrow. Of course I am, sweetheart. Why wouldn't I be? Izuku simply nodded, though something in the back of his mind screamed at him. But what is it saying? Whatever. It probably wasn't important. Are you all right, sweetie? Did you have a bad dream? She asked sweetly, wrapping him in her arms. She was warm. Izuku liked her warmth. It felt nice. He shook his head, eyes drooping. He felt sleepy again. Inko smiled gently, running her fingers through his hair. Just relax, honey. Go back to sleep. I'll be here when you wake up. Izuku hummed quietly, slowly closing his eyes. It felt nice. He liked this feeling. It felt safe. But something was wrong. His stomach churned uncomfortably and his head felt hot, but he didn't want to acknowledge those feelings. He liked where he was now. He didn't want to wake up, but wake up from what? Then there's no need to wake up, Inko whispered, as if reading his mind. Just relax and stay here. In here, we can be together forever. Together? Forever? Izuku liked that thought. They soon heard a knock at the front door. Izuku lazily opened his eyes and Inko smiled, calling out a welcoming, "Come in." The door opened and closed as shuffling could be heard. As footsteps neared the duo, Izuku looked up to see Dabi standing next to the couch, a slight smile on his face as he nodded a greeting to them. Dabi! Izuku cheered, previous sleepiness forgotten as he hopped off the couch, rushing over to his friend. He felt like he had a nickname for the older boy, but couldn't quite remember it. Well, it probably wasn't important. Hey Aizu, he said, accepting the younger boy's tackle hug. patting his back. "Why are you here?" Izuku asked breathlessly. He didn't remember telling his friend where he lived, but he may have just forgotten about it. Dabi raised an eyebrow, amused. "Can't I just visit a friend?" Izuku hummed, rubbing his cheeks against his friend's chest, eyes half-lidded at the heat emitting from the older boy's body. Inko laughed at her son's antics, scooting over so that they could all sit down. The two sat down and the trio chatted, Izuku doing most of the talking as Inko and Dabi threw in their own 2 cents every so often. It was nice. This was nice. Izuku liked being here. He didn't want to leave. Deku. Izuku heard a foreign voice speak out to him. He paused in the middle of his thought, leaving Inko and Dabi to stare at him worriedly. "Izuku!" Inko called out gently. "Are you all right, honey?" Izuku blinked slowly, returning back to reality. Yeah. Just thought I heard something." "That wake up?" He heard it again. He frowned. "Wake up? From what? Wasn't he already awake?" "Wake up." Izuku was so confused. What did it mean? He was awake. "Aizu," Dabi said, snapping the green-haired boy from his thoughts. "Ignore it. Don't wake up." Izuku scrunched up his face. "What do you mean? Don't you want to stay with us forever, Izuku?" Inko asked. He nodded fervently. "Then stay with us." Dabi laughed, rubbing his head. "Don't listen to the voice. Just sleep. When you sleep, you can be with us." Sleep? He was asleep? This was a dream? "There's no need for you to wake up," Inko added softly. "When you wake up, only bad things will await you. So, just sleep. Stay here with us." Bad things? He didn't like bad things. He wanted to be here, where it was warm, where it was safe. "Okay," he nodded. Wake up. Ignore it, Aizu. Wake up. Listen to us, Izuku. Wake up. Don't leave us, Izuku. Wake up. Izuku. Izuku woke up with a start. He blinked rapidly, breathing heavily, as he frantically looked around. Kenshi stared at him with an annoyed expression. "FNG finally. It's no fun torturing you if you're effing asleep." Izuku blinked slowly, waiting for his heart to slow down. His mind was still muddled, and it took a few moments to remember what exactly was going on. That's right. Kenshi had been pulling his nails from his fingers one by one, forcing him to heal himself, then repeating it for a few hours. Izuku ended up passing out after a while, from exhaustion or otherwise he couldn't exactly tell. It's been 6 years since his initial kidnapping. Izuku was now 10 years old and he has long forgotten what it was like to not feel pain. It was only thanks to his quirk that he was still alive, and he'd learned a lot of useful things about it his most likely wouldn't have otherwise. For example, if his intestines were ripped from his body, he wouldn't necessarily die so long as he was quick enough to heal himself. The same for most of his organs, actually. Thanks to that little detail, Kenshi had actually began to sell his organs on the black market. Izuku wasn't sure how he felt about that. On one hand, he was actually somewhat happy that he could possibly be helping someone, but on the other, it hurt. It really hurt. Limbs also regrew, but there wasn't much point in selling those, according to Kenshi, so anytime he lost a limb it was just because Kenshi wanted to hurt him. Izuku had finally gotten the update his quirk had been insisting on since his kidnapping, having had gotten 2 days to himself at some point and sleeping through one after accepting the update so that his quirk could implement the new features. Because of that, Izuku could now upgrade any skills he manages to max out into newer, better ones. It's not too hard to figure out which skill he'd gotten maxed out first. "Don't ignore me when I'm talking to you." Kenshi spat, stabbing a scalpel into his left eye. Izuku barely even flinched, having grown too used to the torture at this point. He was certain Kenshi knew this as well, but still insisted on finding new ways to torture him, only adding up more immunities for the 10-year-old boy, such as pouring acid into his ears and watching with manic glee as it ate away at his brain as his quirk worked overtime with the healing skill to combat it, or injecting him with rat poison and laughing as he coughed up blood and parts of his stomach. He'd even been subjected to a gas that forced him to stay awake for days. The only thing keeping him sane was his quirk gaining a skill that increased his immunity to insanity. But he knew he was still affected by it. So, Izuku dreamed. In his dreams, he would be safe, with his mother and Dabi, The only two people he could vividly remember because he would constantly always look back on all the warm memories they shared. They were the only reason he hadn't completely broken yet. Them and one other. After around 4 years of being locked up, Izuku had stumbled across a kitten who had somehow made its way into the warehouse. Izuku ignored it at first, assuming the animal would simply leave after a while. However, it never did. Of course, it never stayed, but each and every day, always after Kenshi had left, the kitten would sneak into the warehouse and spend a few hours with Izuku before leaving once again. And how could Izuku not grow attached to something so lovable? The kitten was his only beacon of light in this literal hellhole, a beautiful tortoiseshell female with sky-blue eyes. At least he assumed they were. He hadn't seen the sky for a long, long time. Of course, Izuku wasn't aware that the cat's eyes were an unusual color for such a breed, but even if he knew, he wouldn't have cared. He even gave her a name, Dapple. Dapple would rub against his legs, purring lovingly as she seemingly tried to comfort him after his torture sessions, something Izuku was eternally grateful for. He would talk to her sometimes, whenever his throat was well enough for it, anyways, about whatever was on his mind, which was both everything and nothing, Dapple usually sitting in his lap whenever he did this. She would patiently listen, butting her head against his leg whenever he got emotional in comfort. Izuku loved her. He was sure she loved him too. And she was smart. She never got caught by Kenshi, the pro, not even knowing she existed. At least, that's what he thought. You know, Kenshi drawled, slowly pulling the scalpel out, flicking the liquids on it off. You've gotten quite used to all of this, haven't you? You don't scream or cry anymore. You're like a doll now. Boring and emotionless. Izuku stayed silent. So, I've been thinking, what else can I do to break you? To finally push you past the point of no return? Kenshi continued, clearly not expecting an answer. Slowly, he smiled, eyes crazed as he spoke, and I think I've got it. You don't care what happens to you anymore. No, you've gotten too used to that. But what if play with a friend of yours? Izuku flinched, looking up at the man with his good eye, his heart sinking. He couldn't possibly mean? Kenshi snapped his fingers and a metal rod shot out before sharply returning. In its hold was Dapple. She was no longer as small as she used to be, now a fully grown cat, and she looked terrifying. Her fur was all puffed out, her claws unsheathed, her ears pulled back, mouth opened and teeth bared as she hissed, slashing wildly at Kenshi. I noticed this little beach wandering around the area outside a few weeks ago, Kenshi stated, keeping the flailing cat at arm's length. Of course, at first I thought she was just a regular stray, but I got curious after seeing her a few days in a row, always hovering around outside this warehouse. Izuku felt his stomach flip. So, I got curious and stayed behind yesterday, hidden of course, and saw her enter here through a hole even I didn't know was here, and watched as she went up to you and you two seemed to have a swell old time. Izuku began to tremble, voice cracking as he spoke for the first time in days. No. The man repeated, raising an eyebrow as he watched in elated enjoyment at Izuku's squirming. You're not close with it? Then, you wouldn't mind if I dash. No. Izuku immediately cut him off, fighting back tears as he watched his tormentor's crazed grin grow even wider. I see. He laughed. Finally, some effing emotion. Izuku couldn't even react when more metal rods protruded from the ground, wrapping around Dapple's limbs to keep her from moving as Kenshi grabbed some pliers and swiftly removed one of her claws with a swift pull. No! Izuku screamed, openly crying at the poor cat's mangled cries. But she didn't back down. She continued to struggle against the metal, trying to claw at him. Kenshi didn't seem to care, as he continued to pull each and every one of her claws out, each pained cry sending a stab right through Izuku's heart. All too slowly did it finally end, blood dripping from each paw as the claws were scattered on the floor, Izuku bawling as Kenshi grinned happily at him. And for the final touch, Kenshi reached out to grab Dapple's neck, but she moved in and bite him, the fire in her eyes burning as bright as ever. No dash, Izuku cried out, that word seeming to be the only thing he could say as he struggled uselessly against his restraints. You effing beach! Kenshi snapped. He grabbed her neck, and before Izuku could speak out, he heard a snap, and Dapple fell limp. The pro huffed, waving his hand. "FNG piece of sheet." Izuku stared blankly as the rods retreated and Dapple fell to the ground lifelessly, blue eyes staring at nothing. Time seemed to still as Izuku proceeded what happened. When it finally clicked, he did the only thing he could do. He snapped. Kurogyari was having a rough day. First off, he had only gotten a few hours of sleep before Tamura woke him, quite rudely he might add, saying that he had a good feeling for today and that Kurogyari needed to patrol the nearby buildings. Why he couldn't have gotten a grunt to do it Kurogyari would never know, but he knew better than to argue. Nothing good ever comes out of telling the spoiled child any variation of the word no. So, he bit the metaphorical bullet and took his time getting ready for the day, much to the chagrin of his charge. Not that he particularly cared at the moment. Who wakes someone up at 4 in the morning to basically tell them you thought you were going to have a good day? Getting finished after an hour, something he'd usually never do unless it was for an important event, but he was feeling slightly petty. Kurogyari finally left his room and made breakfast. No matter how bad of a mood he was in, he wasn't about to disregard his own health. Maintaining a healthy diet with 3 meals a day is essential to living a healthy lifestyle, after all. After finishing everything he had to do, he'd even made Tamura something to eat. He finally left to do as he was told. He checked his watch when he'd left. It had been 6 o'clock. Now, it would have been a relatively all-right day if that had been the end of his misgivings. However, the world just seemed to hate him today. Not only did Tamura constantly continue to pester him every few minutes with text messages and phone calls, but he had also run into low-time villains causing a ruckus, causing him to miss one of Tamura's phone calls and thus making the teen even angrier at him. Add on to the fact that he didn't even get to see the friendly feline he'd met a few times in the past few weeks when out on a walk or going out for groceries, and Kurogyari could safely say that today just wasn't his day. He was just about ready to call it quits when he noticed a foul stench wafting from a nearby warehouse. He paused, golden slits flicking over to the building, curiosity piqued. It has been a couple of hours since he left the base, having walked a fair bit away, now just outside their territory, so he didn't have any obligation nor permission to enter a place so shady and most likely owned such as that. However, he couldn't help but wanting to take a little peek. It wouldn't hurt, right? Reasoning with himself that it would be fine with just a quick look, Kurogyari made his way over, the smell of iron and bile almost knocking him off his feet. What in the world could have happened here? Adjusting himself to the overwhelming odor, Kurogyari finally made it to the front entrance and pushed open the metal door, slightly surprised to find it unlocked. Peeking inside, he froze, the scene in front of him shocking him. Inside the warehouse was fairly standard, crates lining the walls and a few barrels here and there. However, there was a metal chair sat in the middle of the room and sitting atop. It was none other than the former pro hero Metal Knight. The reason for the former part was because, well, Metal Knight was dead. And it didn't seem like a simple death, either. Skin peeled off haphazardly, boils and bruises littering the few parts of intact skin not rolling off the body. His jaw was ripped open, hanging loosely from a thin piece of skin, the tongue lolling out awkwardly, half of it missing and nowhere to be seen. The hero also had an eye hanging from its socket and the other one pushed it and beaten into a puddle of goop. Golden slits traveled down from the face, which looked like it had been brutally beaten with a meat tenderizer, to the body. And, unexpectedly, the pro's body was not exempt from the brutalization either. Limbs twisted in unnatural ways, bones protruding from multiple places, a few fingers looking like they had been chewed off and the rest bent inwards and in different angles. Blood had pooled all around the chair and only a few droplets dripped from the body, so presumably pretty much all of the blood had been thoroughly drained. The sight was quite gruesome and would definitely give an unsuspecting passersby quite the heart attack. However, Kurogyari was nothing if not an experienced villain already immune to such scenery. All of that was faring unsurprising. What did surprise him, however, was the other person inside. Stood in front of the corpse was a child who looked to be no older than 6, shoulders shaking as he panted, eyes wide and crazed, a feral smile curled on his lips and face and body completely coated in blood. Green eyes snapped up to the mist villain as soon as he'd opened the door, and Kurogyri would be lying if he said he didn't feel a small shiver run down his spine at the ecstatic lunacy on the child's face. Seeing as he was caught and pretending to not know what was going on probably wouldn't cut it, Kurogyri entered the building, calmly closing the door behind him. His gaze flickered over to another body he hadn't noticed before, the familiar black and brown coat of fur causing his heart to ache faintly, shaking his head slightly. He quite liked that cat. "Who are you?" the boy asked, childish voice completely out of place in such a horrific scene. Kurogyri noted that his voice was quite hoarse, as if he hadn't talked at in for a few days, something he was very familiar with since he was acquainted with Tamura. "Pardon the intrusion, I was just taking a walk when I happened to notice the smell coming from this place," he replied politely, not wanting to upset the adrenaline-high child. "Might I ask what happened?" The child began, glancing between Metal Knight and Kurogyri before settling his gaze on his blood-soaked hands. "I killed him. At first, when I hurt him, I felt sick. I wanted to throw up. But he hurt her, and when I thought of that, He paused, swallowing thickly as he tried to tame the shakiness creeping into his tone. After the first few hits, it felt good. It felt good to listen to him scream, to listen to him beg for forgiveness. It felt good to inflict the same pain he inflicted on me on her." Kurogyri wasn't aware of who it was, but seeing as how the only other being in this room was the corpse of the cat, he could vaguely guess who the child was talking about. "And I just couldn't stop." His lips curled into a crazed, broken smile, and Kurogyri felt a shiver run up his spine as the child's shaky gaze brushed over towards him. Ripping of each of his nails one by one, peeling off his skin with a potato peeler, gutting out his insides and healing him just to do it all over again. At the beginning, I was disgusted with myself, but now, tears ran down the boy's cheeks as he hiccuped. "Now I feel alive. I feel so good and He broke off, but Kurogyri understood his implications. For such a young child to have been broken down so badly to torture someone in such an inhumane way. Well, Kurogyri has always had a soft spot for children. "I see. Would you like me to escort you home then?" The child flinched. "I can't go back. Not after what I've done." Kurogyri gave an understanding hum. "I see. Then would you like to come with me?" He almost laughed at the boy's dumbfounded expression as he looked up at the villain, mouth opened like a gaping fish as he sputtered out a "what?" "I'll be honest with you, I am a villain. The place you'd be accompanying me to would be a secret hideout, and I'm sure you're aware that its location needs to be kept top secret. However, I can assure you that, if you were to come with me, you will be offered a safe place to stay and any necessities you may need," he said slowly, not wanting to overwhelm the poor boy too much. The child opened and closed his mouth a few times, and Kurogyri could practically see the gears in his head turn as he mulled over the offer. After a few moments, he spoke up, "But why? Why what? Why would you do that for me? I mean, you don't even know me." Kurogyri hummed. "That's true, but I've never been one to turn my back on a child, even if I'm a villain." That seemed to shock the boy silent, wide green eyes staring owlishly up at him, unbearably innocent compared to before. They reminded Kurogyri too much of a puppy's innocent stare, and he couldn't help but feel his heart soften because of it. He was about to speak again when the boy finally replied, albeit a bit quieter than before. "Okay." Kurogyri was pleasantly surprised that the boy agreed to it so quickly, but that must mean he didn't have too many options to fall back on. Instead of questioning it, he merely nodded. "All right, my name is Kurogyri, and you are?" The child blushed and stammered, looking way too cute to be covered in blood and having just murdered a pro-hero. "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Midoriya Izuku." "Izuku-kun, shall we go?" he asked. When he saw the child's eyes brighten and his smile full of childish glee, Kurogyri couldn't help but feel like Tamura might have been onto something. Maybe today wasn't as bad as he thought. "Welcome. Congratulations. Story mode, Arc 1 completed. Updating system. System update complete. Story recap loading. Recap loaded. Showing all available data. X menu. Profile. Customize persona. Other options. Close. Exprofile. Midoriya Izuku. Level 16. Quirk, Game of Life. Health, 5125 5125. Stamina, 800. Job? EXP, 11 5120. 13. And 36. Def 30. Dex 13. Int 17. Chug 12. Wis 14. Will 23. 15. Xinfo. Welcome to the Game of Life quirk. This section will explain the basic fundamentals of this quirk. Everything else will have to be experienced. To start things off, you and everything else has a level, or LV, which is how strong that person or object is. Depending on the LV, the health points HP and stamina points SP will increase. Inanimate objects do not have SP. If your or another person's HP reaches 0, then you will pass out in order to regain it. However, if you are to be attacked while in that state and your HP falls back to 0, you will die. There is no way to revive anyone else or yourself when that happens. SP will be consumed when you use your skills and is your stamina in general. If you are to fall to 0 SP, then you will be unable to move until you regain 1/3 of it back. There are ways to regain SP if you are running low, such as sleeping, which will restore both your HP and SP back to full, or eating, which will partially restore your HP and or SP depending on the item. Moving on from HP and SP are your skills. You have two sets of skills, passive and active. Passive skills are skills that are always active and are unable to be turned off. These usually come with status effects or increase your attribute points AP that will be touched upon later. Active skills are skills that you have to manually activate and will consume SP. Both sets of skills have LV.S and increase the more you use them, which each use, you gain 1 experience point EXP. You currently have 2 passive and active skills. Please go to the passive skills and active skills pages to learn more about them. Lastly is your AP. Your AP includes the 10 main attributes that everyone has: Strength SR, Endurance END, Defense Def, Dexterity Dex, Intelligence INT, Charisma C, Wisdom WS, Willpower Will, Perception PAR, and Luck LU. Because you were born with this quirk, you are given 10 AP to add to whichever stat you wish to. With each LV you gain, you will gain 1 AP to add to your preferred attribute. However, there are certain things you are able to do to increase a certain attribute, such as reading for INT, training for STR and END, and so on. LU, however, does not have any way to train it. If you wish to know your exact AP status, then please go to the profile page for more information. With that, you are now able to use Game of Life as adequately as you can. Good luck. Close. Menu. X passive skills. Active skills. Relationships. Quest. Close. X passive skills. Mastermind LV. 13 EXP. 2140. Upgraded from critical thinking. User's brain is comparable to a supercomputer, strengthening and quickening thinking capabilities. The higher the skill level, the more unlikely user will be affected by confuse once concentration is broken. Homemade treats LV. 1 EXP. 15. Upon use of this skill, the user is able to make foods in accordance to their level. Anything that is over their level will require the use of SP depending on the dish. Anything made with this skill will immediately give the receiver either plus 10 to 50 RP, FP or LP depending on the intention behind the gift. Angelic Smile LV. 4 EXP. 820. Will cause status charm for up to 5 minutes when user smiles at a target and they are more susceptible to manipulation. Heavy Heart LV. 6 EXP. 270. Upgraded from fake tears. User cries crocodile tears, inflicting worry, and targets are completely susceptible to manipulation and guilt. The higher the skill level, the longer the effects. Lie Overseer LV. 2 EXP. 130. Upgraded from Lie Detector. User is able to detect lies someone says through eyesight alone. The higher the skill level, the faster the skill is. Innocent Eyes LV. 4 EXP. 320. Upon looking into the user's eyes, People will be put under a sense of security and be more at ease with the user. Will be more susceptible to manipulation. Sleep Immunity LV 9 EXP 31100. Upgraded from Sleep Resistance. When user is introduced to sleep-inducing situations, user takes longer to fall asleep. The higher the skill level, the longer it takes. Agile Step LV 2 EXP 110. User is faster and has better reflexes. Unlock full potential at max level. Mind Reader LV 1 EXP 25. User is able to read the mind of anyone they make eye contact with. Eye contact is required for user to be able to read a target's mind. Also unlocks the user's ability to see what others think of them at any time in the Relationships tab. Fear Immunity LV 15 EXP 140-160. Upgraded from Fear Resistance. User's resistance to fear status is increased by half. Pain Immunity LV 12 EXP 101-130. Upgraded from Pain Reduction. The pain the user feels is reduced by half. Thirst Immunity LV 13 EXP 100-140. Upgraded from Thirst Resistance. User is able to last 3 months without water. Hunger Immunity LV 10 EXP 82-110. Upgraded from Hunger Reduction. User is able to last 3 months without food. Horror's How LV 8 EXP 790. Upgraded from Horror Resistance. User is less likely to be inflicted with insanity upon experiencing a gruesome scene. The higher the skill level, the better the effect. Theater Mask LV 11 EXP 73-120. Upgraded from Hidden Emotions. User dulls their ability to feel emotions by half. Iron Will LV 3 EXP 1440. Upgraded from Strong Will. User is more resistant to manipulation, worry, and guilt. The higher the skill level, the stronger the effect. Poison Immunity LV 1 EXP 520. Upgraded from Poison Resistance. User's resistance to poison status is increased by half. Fire Immunity LV 1 EXP 120. Upgraded from Fire Resistance. User's resistance to burn status is increased by half. Stun Immunity LV 1 EXP 120. Upgraded from Stun Resistance. User's resistance to stun status is increased by half. Plead LV 2 EXP 130. Special Skill. User's voice becomes more tender and soft, causing any target to be inflicted with manipulation for up to 3 minutes. Kindred Spirit LV 5 EXP 325. User is able to understand animals' thoughts, wants, needs through body language. X-Active Skills. Sweeping Kick LV 3 EXP 1015. This move allows the user to duck low and swiftly knock their opponents off their feet, causing stun for up to 5 seconds. Deals 15 damage. Uses 5 SP. Power Kick LV 2 EXP 710. This move allows the user to deliver a powerful kick to the opponent. Deals 25 damage. Uses 10 SP. Silver Tongue LV 4 EXP 1220. When in use, targets will be under manipulation for 5 minutes and believe everything the user says and follow any commands. Uses 3 SP. Angel's Touch LV 19 EXP 170-200. Upgraded from Healing Touch. Upon use, target will regain 3/4 of the amount of their max health and will be infected with auto recovery for 3 minutes. Only works if the user is in physical contact with target. Uses 50 SP. Quirk Boost LV 7 EXP 135. Upon use, target will get a boost to their quirk and double the amount of power usage for 5 minutes. Uses 3 SP. Third Eye LV 2 EXP 510. Upon use of the skill, all of the user's sense will be expanded and sight and hearing can be used to up to 50 feet from user's location. Uses 10 SP every 30 seconds. Quick Slash LV 3 EXP 1015. User moves quickly to slash at the target, deals 10 damage, uses 5 SP. Stun Punch LV 2 EXP 710. User delivers a quick punch to the target. Has a chance to cause stun, deals 5 damage, uses 2 SP. Meat Grinder LV, 2, EXP, 1130. Special skill. User overwhelms target with quick, heavy punches hard enough to tenderize meat, causes 50 damage, uses 30 SP. So, Hero LV, 1, EXP, 220. Villain LV, 2, EXP, 1330. Ambiguous LV, 2, EXP, 730. X Relationships. X Info. The Relationships tab will allow you to view those you have deep connections with, allowing them to see you most basic stats and relationship with you. There are 7 basic relationship status options. Family will appear when you are either blood related to that person or are close enough with them that you view them as family and is usually a rank up from friend and lover. This status means you have a deep connection with that person and cherish and trust them deeply. Friend will appear when you have become well acquainted with someone but do not consider them family and is a rank up from acquaintance. This status is more free and you do not necessarily need to have a particularly deep connection with them to have this appear. Acquaintance will appear when you have just become acquainted with someone and generally appears after a first meeting. This status is the most common of all and is grounds for how the relationship will evolve. Love interest will appear when you develop romantic feelings for this person. This status means that you care deeply for that person and cherish them greatly. Lover will appear when you have confirmed your feelings with your former love interest and both of you have confirmed you have the same feelings for one another and have started dating. This status is on the same level as family. Enemy will appear when you view someone as a potential threat or do not get along with someone on any level. This status is a sign of distrust and distaste for the person filed under it. There are many other forms of relationships, but those mentioned above are likely to be the most common. The relationships that are filed in your quirk is how you perceive others and not necessarily how they think of you. It is possible to see how others think of you if you have the passive skill Mind Reader. This tab contains old information. View it anyway? This tab contains old information. View it anyway? X Relationships. Exmideria Inco. A single mother whose husband had left her for unknown reasons. Extremely kind and loving, she cares deeply for friends and family. Will not hesitate to put others' needs before her own. Cares the most for her son Midoriya Izuku. Relationship status. Family. Says. Age. 26. Level. 24. Quirk. Attraction of small objects. Health. 1250012525. Stamina. 423,500. Job. Civilian. And. 15. Def. 18. Dex. 21. Int. 20. 20. Wis. 30. Will. 27. Lu. 11. Ex Todoroki Tuya Dabi. Todoroki Tuya, better known as Dabi, is the eldest child of pro-hero Endeavor, Todoroki Enji. Has 2 younger brothers and sister as well as a mother who was put into a hospital for unknown reasons. His true past is a mystery, but his hatred for Endeavor is well known. Cares deeply for his siblings and mother as well as his friends. Relationship status. Best friend. LP, 51-100. Says. Age, 7. Level, 11. Quirk. Cremation. Health, 725-1,500. Stamina, 200-375. Job, ambiguous. Astur, 24. And, 28. Def, 29. Dex, 19. Int, 20. Cha, 18. Wis, 10. Will, 22. Ex-Bakugu Katsuki. A prideful boy with a powerful quirk. Shown to have a superiority complex, but his true feelings might be hidden under an angry exterior. Relationship status. Friend. RP, 89-100. FP, 63-100. LP, 0-100. Says. Information is locked. Please obtain the relationship friend to view. Information in Relationships tab is outdated. Please interact with each person in it to renew it. Thank you. There are no quests currently available. X other options. Sound 100 100. FOV 100 100. Background noise 100 100. Vision 100 100. Touch 100 100. Taste 100 100. Smell 100 100. Close. Information update complete. Loading new chapter. New chapter loaded. See you next week. 12 years. It's been 12 years since the kidnapping of Midoriya Izuku. It's been 10 years since the disappearance of Todoroki Tuya. The night after the child's disappearance, Tuya had noticeably been more curt and withdrawn from Shudo. The dual-quirked boy could tell the difference between his eldest brother's previous attitude for him and then. Even if the redhead said he didn't blame Shudo for his friend's disappearance, everyone with eyes could see otherwise. And Shudo never forgot that night. Even now, at the age of 16, he can still vividly remember those bright green eyes, ones filled with a determination to save him, to save a person he didn't even know. It left him with a bitter taste in his mouth at the sheer helplessness he felt that night. That feeling fueled his desire to get stronger. And, apparently, it was the same for Tuya. Both of them had begun training even harder than before, Shudo gritting his teeth through endeavors, training, without complaint while Tuya went out to God knows where for training. But, by the looks of it, it might have been even more dangerous than the training Shudo was receiving, if the multiple cuts, bruises, and even stab wounds were to go off of. After Midoriya Izuku's disappearance, the two brothers' relationship grew cold and distant. Fuyumi had tried to get the two to even so much as talk to one another after the incident, and even Natsuo, who had come home later the next day, was not exempt from the awkward tension the two gave off every time they were so much as in the same room as one another. It stayed like that for the next 2 years, and it wasn't like Shudo didn't want to apologize to his brother. Being the sole reason his one and only friend was taken away. But he didn't know how to say that. What could he possibly say to make the other feel any better? I'm sorry I was the reason your friend got kidnapped. Let's go back to being normal brothers? Shudo wasn't stupid, nor was he as clueless about social cues as most people assumed. The 2 years the two didn't talk to one another was a stress-filled time. Shudo almost thought it was going to be that way the entire time until Midoriya was rescued, but Tuya pulled the carpet from underneath all of them by disappearing one day and never returning. Shudo understood his brother's feelings. Despite 2 years having gone by, there was no new news on the case. No, it stopped long before that. Not even a week after Midoriya's kidnapping, the news stopped reporting on it and the police waved it off as a simple, unfortunate kidnapping. Shudo didn't understand. How could they brush it aside like that so easily? It wasn't until years later that Shudo learned that the person who orchestrated the kidnapping, a former pro hero named Metal Knight, whose corpse was found in an abandoned warehouse, paid them off to stop promoting the case of Midoriya's kidnapping. And it made Shudo infuriated. How could police heroes do such a thing? He didn't know. And he doubted he'd ever know. Blue and gray eyes stared out the window, watching silently as raindrops hit the glass almost rhythmically. Trained ears caught the sound of soft footsteps making their way to his bedroom door, and his body tensed in anticipation before the voice belonging to them rang out. Shudo? I'm coming in. Upon hearing Fuyumi's voice, Shudo relaxed, the door quietly opening after hearing his grunt. She walked up to him, glancing at his face before looking out the window. How are you feeling? Shudo spared her a glance, but she didn't look back at him. His eyes returned to the window, voice monotonous as he answered curtly, fine. His sister gave him a small, strained smile. Is that so? The two stood in awkward silence before Fuyumi continued, Are you excited for Yui? The dual quirk user frowned minutely, his fingers twitching as he calmly answered. I suppose. You don't have to lie to me, Shudo. Fuyumi said quietly. I'm not going to judge you. Shudo let out a grunt, but didn't say anything more. They both knew his true reason for even wanting to go to Yui in the first place. It wasn't because Endeavor was forcing him, no. It was because it was just the easiest stepping stone in searching for Midoriya. Contrary to popular belief, Shudo actually cared about the case more than people thought. Because of his stone face, it was the most common arguing point between him and Tuya when his brother was still here. I'll find him. It might have seemed to be a random thing to say, but he knew Fuyumi knew what he was talking about. he clenched his fist, his jaw tightening as he whispered, "I have to." She glanced at him but didn't say anything. She didn't have to. He knew what she was thinking about. But this was something he had to do. And he would. After all, how could he let the person who saved his life go so easily? Midoriya Izuku, his savior. His hero. Midoriya Izuku sneezed, rubbing his nose in confusion as he looked around. Was someone talking about him? He didn't have time to dwell on it before a notification from his quirk popped up. New quest. Objective: a mugging rendezvous. Stop a nearby mugging. Rewards: plus 100 EXP. Plus 10 RP with? Plus 10 FP with? Plus 30 RP with? Will you accept? What the actual F dash? Izuku stared at the words in front of him blankly, taking a long sip of his milkshake. He was so tempted to just ignore it. It was just a mugging. Sure, you'll lose your money and maybe even get stabbed, but it could be worse. However, despite his brain practically screaming at him to just ignore it, he accepted the quest anyway. I mean, why not, right? Izuku had gotten quite addicted to gaining relationship points of any kind, if he were to be honest. It was just so interesting to know that he had some amount of control over whether or not someone liked him, some control over the feelings they thought were all theirs, and that excited him. Tamura had complained that his quirk was a cheat and made his life like a video game. He would have to disagree. It didn't make his life a video game. It made everyone else's life part of his video game. Following the directions on the map layout, he walked upon a typical mugging scene. A kid, who looked to be around his age, a boy by the looks of it, was backed up against a wall in a dark alley with two grown adults pressuring him to give them his money. "Come on, you kid, you gotta have something." One of the guys, shining bald head and teeth so yellow you'd think they were colored in with a marker or something, said, I really don't. The boy stuttered, trembling so hard Izuku was surprised he even managed to get out a somewhat coherent sentence. Before either of the two men could speak, Izuku cut them off, rubbing the back of his neck as he chewed on his straw. "Yeah, hey, guys, not to be a stick in the mud, but I'd appreciate it if you F'd the back up." All three of them turned their attention to him, the two men glaring at him while the kid looked slightly scared but more so relieved. "Huh? And who do you think you are?" "Your dad," Izuku said, not missing a beat. "And I'm severely disappointed in you, Masaru. What would your mother think if she knew what you were doing?" The taller of the two men paled, eyes widening in horror. How did you know my name?" Izuku shrugged. "That's for me to know and you to never find out. Now F off, Yamasaki Masaru and Hada Kuru." The two men looked as pale as snow when he said their full names. Even the kid looked horrified. As they should be. "An information quirk?" The short man said, trying and failing to keep the tremble out of his voice. "Huh? Trying to scare us away. Quite the bluff, don't you think?" Izuku eyed him for a moment before sighing. He waved his hand and a play button appeared on each of the men. "What are you?" Izuku didn't let them finish before pausing both buttons, causing both men to stop in their exact position. The boy blinked rapidly, looking at the two would-be muggers and Izuku, opening and closing his mouth, unable to say anything, looking like a fish. The green-haired boy didn't bother to explain anything and just knocked both men out. He wiped his hands off. "All right, I guess. I'll just tie them up or something. You can drag them to the police station or throw them in front of a truck or something. I don't f***ing care." He turned around to leave but was stopped by the other boy grabbing his hand, yelling out a panicked, "Wait!" Izuku turned to look at him. Hair a golden blonde with a black streak like a small lightning bolt splayed across some of his bangs. Golden eyes stared into green, gratitude shining clearly in them. "Thanks, man. I don't know what I would have done without you. I'm Kaminari Denki. What's your name? Congratulations. You have completed the quest A Mugging Rendezvous. Rewards: plus 100 EXP. Plus 10 RP with Kaminari Denki. Plus 10 FP with Kaminari Denki. Plus 30 RP with Yagi Tashinori." Izuku raised an eyebrow, sipping his shake. "Yagi Tashinori, huh? None of your business." He ripped his arm from the boy's grasp and walked off, frowning when he heard the sound of air being sucked from the cup. He was out already? Kaminari shouted out, "Wait, are you applying to Yui at least? You could totally become an awesome but hero." Izuku forced down a shiver that threatened to arise when he heard the word hero, but he gave the other a small wave of affirmation. The blonde didn't try to stop him after that, but instead beamed and said to himself once Izuku was out of earshot, "Oh, I'm going to friend the F out of that guy." Player bonus, a burning passion. Thanks to the heroic actions and mysterious attitude of Midoriya Izuku, Kaminari Denki has taken an interest and is determined to become friends. Player bonus rewards. Plus 20 FP with Kaminari Denki. Plus 30 RP with Kaminari Denki. Plus 10 LP with Kaminari Denki. Player bonus, an interesting child. After seeing Midoriya Izuku's heroic deeds but cold demeanor, Yagi Tashinori has become slightly interested in seeing how his future will pan out. Player bonus rewards. Plus 5 RP with Yagi Tashinori. Plus Yagi Tashinori's Watchful Eye. Izuku did shiver once he noticed the debuff Watchful Eye appear over his health bar and, upon checking it, was annoyed to find it had an infinity symbol attached to it. Great. He had a stalker now. Just what he needed. He wasn't surprised to see the player bonus pop-ups, since, over the years, he's seen his fair share of those. They were just as they appeared to be, bonuses that appear just for a few extra benefits, usually after having completed a quest, and whatever benefited from that quest felt gracious enough to give him extra rewards. Izuku felt it was a fair give and take, even if he more than often benefited the most from it, and the fact that the other party didn't know anything about his quirk to begin with. The green-haired boy hummed quietly to himself, making sure to lose his new stalker before returning to the bar. "Kurogyri, I want another milkshake."